The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders, the advice and opinion of a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
I'm muted. I was saying good morning, but I was muted. Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and I'm coming to you from my house. And we're going to have guests coming to you from different places around the world, really. Thrilled to be here with you this morning live on this Monday morning. It seems like it's been at least a month since we were here together, and it was only 3 days ago. So I don't know what that's about. We were just saying that the weekend wasn't long enough, but it seems like it was at least a month and a half. I will confess that my family, for the first time ever, we were the last people on the face of the earth to ever watch Game of Thrones. We'd not seen a single episode, not 5 minutes of it. And so we've started watching Game of Thrones. And so, you know, and we watched a few episodes of Game of Thrones. And I would not recommend that you watch this with anybody under the age of 17, really 35. But, you know, be that as it may. So I think maybe that made the weekend seem longer. But thrilled to be here with you this morning. Thrilled to be back with real people who aren't waiting for the winter to come. And excited to be with you. This week is going to be big because we've gotten more information. You know, for a long time we were sitting on tenterhooks going, we have no idea what's going to happen in the fall. Now we have this much of an idea of what's going to happen in the fall, and that's movement, right? So we're going to have a couple of different shows where we're going to be talking about that. You know, today we're going to have Bonnie Yates with us again. And I don't even know what Bonnie's going to talk about because it's so interesting. And it is not a one size fits all, like everything else in the world and in life and in autism, right? That some of you don't have kids going to school at all. And some of you have kids that are going to be going back with no masks. And some of you have kids that aren't, you know, are doing distance learning. So it's not a one size fits all. We got to take that into consideration, but there's a lot to talk about. So we're going to do that today. And I just want to tell you that tomorrow on the show, tomorrow's big, like tomorrow's busting at the seams, because first we have two of our top researchers that come on the show once a month on Fridays. They're going to join us on a Tuesday because it's that big to talk to us about all of the research about distance learning for classrooms. So I don't know about you, but I want a front row seat for that, right? And then when they're done, we're welcoming Lisa Ackerman from TACA, the Autism Community in Action. And she's going to be talking about some pretty important things. I know we all were sort of celebrating that ADA turned 30 over the weekend, the Americans with Disabilities Act. And, you know, I just want to give a big shout out to our friend, Tony Coelho. And maybe I'll reach out to Tony to see if he's got any time in the next couple of weeks to be on the show. Tony was one of the original writers of ADA. Huge thing, turning 30, that's no small thing. So thrilled about that. But, and I know that Lisa will probably want to mention that, and we'll talk about biomedical, but they've got a conference coming up and they're doing it in a different way. For any of you who've ever been like, oh, I would just love to go to a TACA conference, but I can't physically get there. I can't, you know, and they have them in the spring and in the fall on either coast, but, you know, sometimes that's just not possible. You got to be there with your kiddo. Well, this year, for the first time, the fall one, it's going to be online. And so Lisa's got some information for you about that. And we all can get to this conference. And I tell you, like, I would mark it down and be like, I got to go there. So on Wednesday, we have Dr. Grant Boucher back. Woo, how cool is that? And on Thursday, for the first time in a long time, we're welcoming back one of our original regulars, Dr. Evelyn Gould is going to be with us. When she was on the show, when we first started, boy, she was a fan favorite. And then she left to go become Dr. Gould, because she wasn't Dr. Gould then, and to do more research and do more practical work in the field of autism and other related disorders and anxiety. And so she's going to be joining us to talk about her work with acceptance commitment therapy, and it's cutting edge stuff for the autism community right now, for both caregivers and for the individuals on the spectrum. So you're not going to want to miss that. And then for the next couple of weeks, because it's summer, we're going to be showing some oldies but goodies for the Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. So I don't know which one we're showing on Friday, but something good, something really good, I guarantee you. So anyway, that's what the week is shaping up to be. Now, I remind you guys that we're live and we love to hear from you. We want to know your thoughts, your feelings, your question, your concerns. There's lots of ways to connect with us. Our homepage is autism-live.com. There is a chat at the bottom, totally anonymous. You can write as much as you want. I've been having trouble accessing it, but we think it's working today, so you can try that. Can't promise. But I can tell you that you can talk to us live right now on Facebook and on YouTube. We are also live right now on Twitter and Periscope if you prefer to watch us there. It's just more efficient to talk to us on Facebook and YouTube, if I'm honest. But you can tweet at us. It takes us a little bit while longer to get that. But then later on, if you are wanting to watch more shows, or you're like, hey, I just discovered this and I didn't know this was here, and maybe they've got something about the thing that's, really tearing my ticket. I just want to remind you that we've been doing this show now for, I think officially this week, we crest 9 years of doing the show. So that's a lot of shows, and they're available to you on our website. And you can search. They're also available to you on our YouTube channel. You can watch those old versions of Evelyn Gould being an expert on our show. You can do all of that. We've had a lot of amazing people on the show, so that's all available to you on YouTube and on our homepage, autism-live.com. They're very searchable. Put in a name or a topic or an issue, and you should be able to find a plethora of things that are there. If you don't find what you're looking for, write into us. I want to segue into that. We have a lot of experts on the show, but I'm not one of them. I'm a mom of an individual who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2.5. And somewhere around there, I said, in order to take care of this, I'm going to give up being a mind reader. So that's why you have to write in, because I can't read your minds. But I am a proud mom of a kiddo who was diagnosed at 2.5. And I am one of the luckiest people on the face of the planet, because I got the very best of what he needed. And I got that because I was lucky. I want to be abundantly clear. I know somebody said to me, well, you must have been very wealthy. Nothing could be further from the truth, right? We were applying for food stamps. So no, not wealthy. I got very lucky. I happened to be living in the right place at the right time and meet the right people who sent me to the right people. And those people helped me to find people who would help us to fight for the funding. And we fought and we worked hard to be able to get the funding. And then once we had the funding, we did the thing and kept doing it over and over and over again. So, and part of that equation is that, while on the day before, literally the day before I knew about CARD and the Center for Autism and Related Disorders and what they could do for my son, I was on my knees praying on our bedroom floor and saying, please God, help me to know what to do. Show me what to do, make it clear, because you know how I am. And if you show me, I promise I'll do it. And not only that, if you help me to help my child, I promise I will help whoever I can. And this show is a living embodiment of that. I want to make sure that I'm helping you. Now, when I say you, who am I talking to? This show is really meant for the entire autism community. I mean, the entire autism community. And who do I count in that? Of course, individuals on the spectrum. That's the core. That's the beating heart of this community, right? And we don't do anything without them, right? And we want to be here to be an information and inspiration for those folks. But we also want to do that for everyone who loves those folks. That's, moms and dads and grandparents and uncles and aunts and spouses and boyfriends and girlfriends and teachers and practitioners. That's all those people. We want to be a resource for all those people. So that's what we are here. We're saying hello to Christina, and we're saying hello to Chem Cosmos. Hey, how about that? We're thrilled to be here. So that's what we're doing. Don't mistake me for an expert, even though I've been doing these kinds of shows, because before this I had a radio show, Everyday Autism Miracles, which those are still available. Those are still online too, if you want to go back to the early days, when I didn't know which way was up. But now I've had the opportunity to interview a lot of experts. Still, that doesn't make me an expert, but it does mean that I have an informed opinion, or at least that's what my opinion. Right? But don't take me for an expert. But I'm here and I'm your cheerleader, and I want for you to get to the things that you want to get to. So put me to work. Let me know what you need. Don't make me guess, was the whole point of that discussion. Okay, so on Mondays, before we get to anything else, we like to do something here that we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym, and we try to figure out what in the hey nani are these experts talking about? What does this have to do with me? Why should I bother learning this whole new thing? Blah, 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 right? But we've found, or I've found, and many of us have found, that when we make friends with these terms just a little bit at a time, because we don't want to be overwhelmed, right? But if we make friends with these terms, we start to understand why the jargon exists, because jargon is there to be something that speeds things up. And I don't know about you, but when my son was in intervention, I wanted to speed things up, right? And my being able to understand what the experts were talking about sped things up. So eventually I started making friends with the jargon. So what we do here for our pleasure and enjoyment is that first we give you a jargon term, and then we give you the actual definition, often the textbook definition, and then I make fun of that. And then, whenever possible, and then we move on to a working definition where you have, a mom explain it to you as best as she can, so that hopefully you'll begin to understand what the term means. Okay, so today it's an oldie but a goodie. One of my faves, in fact, for those of you who ever do an orientation with me, that there are families that I do group orientations and I do one-on-one orientations when they become new card parents. This is one of my faves to talk about, the 3-term contingency. Doesn't this sound like something to do with how many years a president can be in office? No, that's 4. And actually that's 8. So let's take a look at what the actual definition of the 3-term contingency. One time I called it the 3-term contagion. It's not that either. The 3-term contingency in operant conditioning refers to stimulus control, in particular an antecedent contingency called the discriminative stimulus, SD, that influences the strengthening or weakening of behavior through such consequences as reinforcement or punishment. Woo! It's a goodie, isn't it? Because don't you just like hear the toilet flushing in the background as you start to read this? And you can't read it in any other way than with a good elevator voice, because it makes no sense, right? Let's read it again to see how many words we have any idea. Like most of these words, I'm like, okay, operant is always a word that slips through me. I'm like, I really don't know what that means. I know what operant conditioning is, but I don't know what operant is. And for most of you, bless you, if you know what operant conditioning is, then you've been doing this for 9 years too. And then stimulus control, what? And then let's clarify it. In particular, an antecedent contingency. It's my favorite when somebody's defining something and they use words in the definition to define it. Don't you love that? Don't you want to go, no, use different words. I didn't get it the first time, which is why I need you to use different words. And then we get into discriminative stimulus, and then they're going to give us the abbreviation for that. And I just want to put my head in an oven. I don't know about you guys. So it's like, woo, got no idea what we're talking about. So let's move on to our working definition to see if we can't put this in terms that we understand. How about this? This is the ABCs of behavior. The 3-term contingency is the ABCs of behavior. And if we can just remember ABC, right? We're halfway there. There's a little bit more jargon because the A stands for antecedent, which is a word we're not as familiar with. But you will be. If you're going to stick around in the autism world and you're going to have anything to do with applied behavior analysis, and if you want to have your life be better, you're going to remember what antecedent is. So we have antecedent, behavior, and consequence. So what I do with parents all the time, excuse me, and this doesn't work well with this lighting, but I have just a piece of notebook paper here, and I know it's making more noise than anything else, but I folded it into three. I just folded into three. Boom, boom, boom. Now I have 3 columns, and across the columns, I don't know if you can see, I wrote A, B, C. And as a parent with a child with autism, I carried one of these around with me everywhere, because this is what my BCBA asked me to do. And this saved my life. I'm not candy coating it here. It saved my life for a lot of different reasons. So first of all, my son would tantrum, right? And if you asked me on day one, before I started ABA, why does he tantrum? I would say, oh, it is just random. He has autism. It is just random. He just tantrums because he tantrums. And I was wrong. He was tantruming for very specific reasons. I just couldn't figure out what they were because I had an assumption, oh, that's autism, and that's just going to happen. That is a lie. If you look up the definition of autism, it does not say has tantrums anywhere. It just doesn't. Now, do tantrums go with autism? Yeah, because if I can't tell you what my needs are and get them met, I'm going to tantrum. And it doesn't matter how old I am, the more impacted I am, the more I'm going to do this, right? But even people, if I can't get my needs met, I tantrum. So, right? And so do a lot of people. I'm not proud of it necessarily, but I'm just saying it happens, right? So then they taught me the ABCs of behavior, that everything that we do, every behavior that we do, there is something that happens before the behavior. That's the antecedent. And then there is something that happens after the behavior. That's the consequence. And if the antecedent keeps happening the way it's happening that caused the behavior, and the consequence is something that's, relatively okay for me, that helps me to get my needs met, then I'm going to do this behavior all the time because it's working for me. It's just that simple and that straightforward. As parents and as teachers, because I'm a former teacher here, we tend to be obsessed with the behavior. We're like, I don't want them to do that. What I want is for them to do this. They need to stop doing this and they need to start doing this. And we obsess on the behavior. The problem is you really don't have very much control over the actual behavior. You really don't. Like, we can stand there and say to someone, stop doing that. Stop doing that. Don't do that. Stop doing that. But, if they're determined to do it, short of physically restraining them, how are we going to get them to stop doing it, right? And we don't want to be physically restraining anybody. That's not how we want to live. That's not how we want to parent. That's not how we want to teach, right? So here's the good news. While we don't have that much control over the behavior, we have tons of control over the antecedent and tons of control over the consequence. But the first thing we got to do is figure out what's going on. So we keep our little ABC sheet. And every time my son would throw a tantrum, the very first thing I would do is go to the B column and I would write down exactly what he did during the tantrum. Well, he started throwing things, and then he started spitting at me, and then he tried to hit me, and then, he threw the remote at the television. I write it all down. Now, this is one of the ways that it saved my life, because previous to this sheet, when my child would have a tantrum, do you know what I would stand there and think? I would think, oh my gosh, I am the worst parent on the face of the planet. This is my fault. And this is going to be the rest of our lives. And I can't handle this the rest of my life. And what's going to happen when I die? And it would just escalate. And that's where my thought process would be, right? And this helped me to be in the moment. What is he doing? Because I would remember that I had to write it down on the paper. Oh, okay. And now he's spitting. And now, oh, look at that. He's throwing something. I became a reporter. And that helped me to not be in that place where I was escalating it into the rest of my life, which is I'm telling you, when you're a court reporter, it feels much better than, oh no, the rest of my life is going to be like this. Trust me. So you write down everything in the behavior. And then you think to yourself, okay, what happened after the behavior was over? Like when he was done throwing the tantrum, did I give him lemonade and cookies? Did I pet his head and tell him it's okay? Did I help him to calm down? All of these things, which I thought were good parenting, but were in fact helping the behavior to happen again and again and again, because when I freak out, mom pets my head and gives me lemonade. I'm gonna do it, winning, right? You have to be humble and just write down exactly what the consequence was. The consequence was he got to have his iPad and he got to watch the cat video that he likes to watch, right? So you write that down, and then you go back and you're a detective and you try to think what happened beforehand. And you write down like what time this all happened to, and you keep a diary. And after every behavior, you draw a line and then you write more for the next one. And then you give that to the BCBA working on your case. I guarantee you, without being a BCBA, will start to see a pattern. You'll go, that's interesting. He seems to throw his tantrums every day at 2 o'clock. Now we start to look, what's happening at 1:30? Like, did we feed him red food coloring for lunch? Because some kids have tantrums because they have red food coloring, and about a half an hour later, they lose their cookies entirely, right? Or, he's having the tantrum at 2 o'clock. Is that because the neighbor's sprinklers turned on and he's having to process everything and that noise is high pitched and driving him crazy? Or did we put a demand on him? And he was having fun. He had lunch and then he had a break and was watching cartoons. And we said, okay, it's time to pick up our toys. And that's when he had the meltdown. And so we're a detective. We start to look for what's in common here. And we start to be able to infer what it was that is what's going on. But you really want to be working with an expert on this. But I'm telling you, you will start to see a pattern for yourself. Because now, once we know, okay, well, here's what's going on, we can change some of the antecedents and we can change some of the consequences. And when we do, there are so many studies that show that our kids learn, and they learn, how to get their needs met, and they stop having to tantrum to get what they want. If I know when mom says, hey, we're going to work on schoolwork, that, we're going to work on schoolwork for this amount of time, and then I'm going to get this huge reward, then I want to work on schoolwork rather than tantrum, right? Okay, so that's the 3-term contingency. It is life-changing. It's absolutely life-changing. And it doesn't matter if you're doing this with your kiddo on the autism spectrum, or you're doing this with your husband who's putting his socks on the floor and not in the laundry bin. Like you think to yourself, what is the behavior? My husband is putting his socks. My husband doesn't do this, by the way, but this is like the number one complaint I hear from wives. I am much more guilty of this than my husband is, but so my husband is leaving his socks on the living room floor. What is the antecedent? He's tired and he wants to get in the shower, and he does what's expeditious. He puts them on the floor. And the consequence is that I nag at him, but it's like a gnat, right? So we can change that. Like, you can move where the laundry basket is and put it where, so that it's easy when he's tired. Or you can change the consequence and, do all kinds of things. But the best antecedent modification for that is to thank him in advance for putting them in the basket and give him a big kiss and say, thank you for putting your socks in the basket. It's really great. My back's killing me and it's really great when you do. I just love you so much. Mwah. Antecedent, and then watch it unfold. And he puts those socks, and then the consequence has to be that he gets another big kiss. Thank you. Oh, you just make me feel like I'm so special when you put the socks in the laundry basket. Oh, it's better than a dozen roses. And suddenly there's no socks on the floor anymore. I'm telling you, this stuff works. Bonnie is here. So, Ms. Bonnie, how are you? We are not hearing you yet. But as I mentioned before, Bonnie is a lawyer. Hi.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. How are you?
Is the AC noise too loud? Should I turn it off?
No, I'm not hearing anything at all. So
okay, good.
You're fine. But Bonnie, how are you?
I'm good.
Okay. So we've got a little bit, we've got about 15 minutes here. So tell them really quickly about Tollner Law Offices.
Toner Law Office is an aid attorney special education firm. We cover all of Southern California. We do all disabilities. We do IEP. We do, due process, regional center. We do ADA and 504 and university cases, and a little bit of other stuff too as it comes up. So some stuff did come up. I know you said you have questions or no?
Well, everybody has questions, but it all stems around the same thing. It's just different circumstances. Everybody wants to know what to do now that they know what's happening with school.
Well, okay.
Basically,
first of all, I would say I don't know what's happening because I don't believe that any set of circumstances we've had has remained the same black letter consistent policy for more than 2 weeks. But I will talk about some stuff that's come up recently. I don't know that it's going to get any traction, but apparently President Trump said that he's going to ask for Congress to let federal funds follow each child to private school if public schools aren't open. So I'm trying to decide how I feel about that. That's kind of interesting. Also hearing that school districts are reaching out to the federal government asking for protective legislation because they're anticipating an unprecedented amount of litigation as a result of school closure. Talked with a friend of mine this morning who's an attorney on the other side, who I like a lot and respect a lot, and she said it's never going to come to pass that the federal government will give those kinds of idea protections. So, that's her take on things. Had a question over the weekend about retention, which I've gotten asked about from time to time over the years, and districts have always been negative on the subject of retention. I'm finding some more willingness now for districts to consider retention, and there are pros and cons in terms of retention sort of as a remedy, if you will. Retention became disfavored because it was being used as a way to sort of get around having an IEP that hadn't provided FAPE, because if it had, you wouldn't have had to be retained. That didn't really take into account, let's say, the fact that some kids with autism just developmentally needed another year, maybe more of same, maybe, let's say another year of kindergarten where it's not so academic and you have social time kind of, at the top of the agenda. But anyway, there's a lot of reasons why retention is disfavored, mainly because it's supposed to not be a substitute for a good solid IEP. But some parents now are asking about retention. It's going to be on a case-by-case basis, but I wanted to let everybody know that, that there's more willingness, more flexibility. School districts are also sometimes, throwing up their hands and caving. I had a mediation last week that, for reasons I can't really go into here, I thought they were going to give me a lot of pushback, and instead they said, okay, you got your receipts, you want reimbursement for that placement, and you want the distance learning program that your placement offers for fall 2020-21 school year. And without kind of making it obvious that my jaw was on the ground, I said yes. And I realized that they have no choice in a lot of situations, and they realize that they have no choice. So that might work to the advantage of some of you who want a residential placement or a non-public or a private school. In terms of what folks are doing in light of the announcement in California that many schools are going to be closed, and I'm not looking at it as indefinite, as 2 weeks, 4 weeks. I'm looking at it as first semester, for better, for worse, just given the way the infection is progressing in the state. So, as you said at the beginning, people want to know what to do in light of their individual circumstances. So the analysis, as far as I'm concerned, is what did your IEP provide for? What did your distance learning plan provide for? What did you actually get? How did your child respond to that? did your child lose skills and lose ground? And if so, can you prove it? What kind of documentation do you have? What ways do you have to quantify the regression? And then you write a letter to the district. You tell them what you need for fall. You give them a time frame in which to respond. And when they don't respond, you file for due process to get compensatory education. If you're paying for compensatory education now, you need to give 10 business days notice if you want to sue for reimbursement. You have to do that. You just get out the calendar and count 10 business days. You write them a letter. You send it to the assistant principal of the school. You tell them why their offer wasn't FAPE and it wasn't appropriate during distance learning. And you give them your reasons for choosing the other alternative. And once you give them the 10 business days notice, although they have the option to convene an IEP meeting and try to offer you FAPE, it's unlikely that that will happen. And then you will have the ability, assuming the school district doesn't respond, to wait until your child has made progress in the private setting, and then you can sue for reimbursement. So that's sort of the larger template that, you know, I'm going to customize to your individual circumstances, you know, depending on the specific facts of your case and what kind of, you know, data you have. I was saying all spring, you know, people, please, you know, here's a cheat sheet for how to collect data on what you were supposed to get versus what you got. And, you know, and please note, you know, any progression or regression. And this is the reason why I was doing that. You know, I was waiting for now. So we can take more questions about that on the air. I can take specific questions about that off the air. The other question I got on Friday that I just did a little looking into, if we have time, we could talk about it, or we could save it for another show. If you have other things you want to talk about.
No, go ahead.
I had a parent contact me and say that their child was in a truly private school, not a non-public school. And they disclosed her child's IEP to a number of people without her permission. And she wanted to know what her remedies were. So I figured I should do a little something for Autism Live on FERPA, the Federal Educational Records and Privacy Act. And so I've done that, and I'm going to talk to you about it, but I want to tell you first, the question I didn't really answer is what right of action does she have as a private school parent? Because according to the research I did, you can't sue under FERPA if you're a private school student, unless the entity receives funds from the federal government. So then the question is, you know, like what other privacy statutes would she be able to potentially use to sue? And, you know, how good are her damages? And I really haven't finished the research, but I did learn some stuff about FERPA. So one of the things I learned about FERPA is that if you are, or your child is, your student is subjected to an unauthorized release of your privacy records and you're covered by FERPA, you have to bring a complaint within 180 days of the incident. So I sent you, Shannon, a little, just a website for people if they want to go and look at the U.S. Department of Education's FERPA resources. And then if we have time and you want to, we could talk about FERPA some more.
Yeah, let's, because, you know, I think we all, I guess I'm a little naive, let's say that, because I understand that my child has the right to privacy. And I can think of a very specific time a few years ago when somebody very publicly came up to us at a farmer's market, and they were actually visiting. We were at a booth at a farmer's market. There were probably 100 people standing around, and it was her sibling that it was their booth. And we had gone to this farmer's market booth forever, and my son would have conversations with the woman. Well, now the sister is there, and she said, "Oh my goodness," and said his name, and you know, and said, "Oh, I didn't know you were here." And then the woman said, "How do you know him?" And she said, "Oh, well, I know him because I work with him at his school. He's in the autism program, and I'm not his aide. So-and-so is his aide. But said all of these things out loud, and I said, no, 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 no. And she didn't, and then I think eventually she didn't catch on, but then eventually I said, stop. And, and everybody said to me, I should have filed a complaint. I should have done, but
well, that's a different situation, because that's a right of action against a private citizen. That's even, less potentially meaty than suing a private school.
So tell us like what circumstances that we would need to file a FERPA. When would we do this? Why would we do this?
Well, you would do it if the state educational agency released records of your child's or the students without your permission. Okay. So
how would we know that they did that, I guess, is my next question.
Well, okay, so I had a case a couple years ago where the kiddo went on Canvas, and apparently there was a page on Canvas that talked about her IEP and her diagnoses, and she found out she had autism.
Oh my goodness.
As a teenager, she had no idea she had autism, and this occasioned a huge psychological uproar, because all of a sudden she's dealing with and that was part one of the case. Part two of the case was that the special ed teacher decided that it would be a good exercise for the students to learn about their accommodations. So she brought a copy of each kid's IEP to the learning center, whatever the class was, a special day class. And she handed out like these 8 IEPs, and then she had each kid reading their accommodations from their IEPs.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
So, that was a teacher that had been around a long time.
Wow.
And
she made no attempt to like redact who they were?
No, that case settled. And and at the time, the parent and I thought that the amount of money that we were offered reflected a concern about that part of the case, maybe more than just the due process part.
Oh,
so that would be that's those are experiences that I've had within the last year and a half.
Wow. Okay, I'm just always gobsmacked by stupidity. Okay. All right. So and I've just sent over to Traven what you sent. So Traven, maybe you can put the link in the Facebook comments for what Bonnie sent us, and explain a little bit what that link takes us to, Bonnie.
Yeah, what that link is going to take you to is the federal Department of Ed's website on FERPA, and they have everything up there. They have guidance about how FERPA works. They have how to file a FERPA complaint. They have a lot of interesting trainings if you want to take actually a virtual training. And then I just kind of like stole the high points that are available about FERPA, and I could just sort of try to breeze.
Got about 2 minutes. Is 2 minutes enough time, or you want to wait for next week?
No, I think it's good, and if we'll see where we are. Anyway, it's a federal program. As we said, parochial and private schools aren't really subject to it because they don't receive federal funds. It gives custodial and non-custodial parents' rights with regard to their student records. When the student becomes 18, then the student becomes the holder of the FERPA rights. One of the things in FERPA is under the federal law, you have a right to request your students' records, okay, under FERPA, but it's much slower than in California. It's a 45-day process, not a 5-day process or 5 business days. And then the statute basically talks about what they aren't required to do. So, you might want to look at, I could send my cheat sheet if you want, so that if you want to look at what things they aren't required to do or what things they aren't required to disclose to you, you have that available to you. FERPA was intended to require only that schools conform to fair record-keeping practices and not to override the accepted standards and procedures for making academic assessments, disciplinary rulings, or placement determinations. Thus, while FERPA affords parents the right to seek to amend education records which contain inaccuracies, this right cannot be used to challenge a grade. An individual's opinion or substantive decision made by a school about a student cannot be challenged under FERPA. Additionally, if FERPA's amendment procedures are not applicable to a parent's request for amendment of education records, the school is not required under FERPA to hold a hearing on the matter. So in that case I talked to you about, we were proceeding under FERPA because we were asking them to fix her friggin' online file and they wouldn't do it. They left it up. So that's one of the ways that people use FERPA, is they use it to challenge inaccuracies in educational records. But you're hearing here that is not going to mean you can do a grade challenge, which if people ever want to show on how to do a grade challenge, we can do one. But you can't use FERPA for that. And it just keeps going in terms of what they can disclose, who they can disclose to, that they have a requirement to give parents notice of their FERPA rights. That's usually going to be in the procedural safeguards that you get at the IEP, and so on. I mean, I'll send you my cheat sheet, and you guys can look at my cheat sheet, my FERPA cheat sheet. That's what I'm reading.
We are unfortunately out of time, but we so appreciate you, and we'll continue this conversation. And we want to remind everybody that you're with the Tollner Law offices, and that if they are in California, they should reach out to the Tollner Law offices in Southern or Northern California. Or Central, that's true. And if you're not in California and you're looking for legal assistance, Bonnie has a website that she recommends. Go ahead, Bonnie.
Yeah, copaa.net. That's a 50-state database of special ed attorneys that I think are, good, committed, reputable people that are doing this for the right reason. Now, I do want to say that I think it's a really good way to learn about the IDEA if we talk about individual scenarios. So that means you guys have to send me for next week your individual scenarios, like what what you had, what you got offered, what happened, where you're at now, what you want to do. That would be helpful for other people, even if their facts are different.
All right. I was just sort of blending them all together, but I can separate them out and send them to you. Not a problem. Bonnie, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us.
Anytime.
All right.
Take care. Okay.
We're over time, but I'm just going to take a second here to go back through some of the things. And then I got one of those pop-up windows. I just hate that. And it won't go away on its own. Okay, so I want to go through some of the comments that we didn't get to because some of them were super important. Hang on. Let me see if I can get it to do it. I just hate this thing. Go away. Okay, it went away. Let's, and of course it took me to the window. Oh, I just hate it. Okay, now I'm back. All right, so I told the person who wanted me to email them, please email me, s.penrod@autism-live.com. Pizza Lover 1 says, I don't like wearing a mask. So when I wear a mask, I eat an ice cream when I get home. There's your reward. There's the consequence for it. And it's maintaining that behavior. Somebody answered the question of the day. What do they do to reward themselves for good behavior? They said, I stay up a little bit and watch Disney Plus after a long day taking care of everyone. Good for you. And they take a little R&R. Sarabjit, excuse me, says making it fun, great advice. Kristen said yes. Good morning, Tammy, saying good morning to you. And Stephanie, I want you to know that we do what Traven, our producer, is able to see the comments on Facebook and on YouTube, and what he does is he aggregates them and sends them to me. So there's a little bit of a lag. But I do get to see both. Helen says we're in the UK and we have an exemption card. Nita says, what are important resources for learning more about autism? Autism is this big subject, so it depends on what you want to learn. If you are a caregiver and you want to learn about biomedical or diet or anything, having to do with that, I would go to, other than here, I would go to TACA, T-A-C-A now.org. We're going to have the founder of TACA on the show tomorrow. If you have even a preteen or a teenager or an adult on the spectrum, or you are a teenager preteen or an adult on the autism spectrum, I would encourage you to go to wrongplanet.net. That is a great resource. I think between those two websites, Taka and wrongplanet.net, you'll find a lot. Like, I could send you to those two places and you could come back in 2 years and tell me that you still hadn't gotten to the bottom of those websites. But I will tell you that I think that we're a great resource too. Peggy wants to know, can someone with 27 years of hands-on experiment go on here live? Anyone can pitch an idea to me. Write to me at s.penrod@autism-live.com. Many people have done that and ended up being a guest on the show. Tell me what you would like to talk about and give me your talking points and your availability, and let's see if we can work that out. Jacinda says, I love you guys. Always give me strength in navigating the school system. I'm so glad to hear that, because that means a lot. Pizza Lover 1 says, I'm concerned about other states. And we try to give you information about, a little bit about everywhere. Everything is so different right now. We're saying hi to Sapphire. I'm good, Sapphire. I hope that you're good. Jacinta says, heartbreaking. I know. I'll be giving those people's information out. MW says, gobsmacked, LOL. I was raised by British teachers, so I love that term. What are important resources for learning about autism? Hopefully I've answered that. And Nasser says, hi. So there might be more recent comments, but I wanted to at least address those, you guys. Thanks for writing in. It's so much more fun for me when you guys are interactive with us. That's to me is joy. Don't forget, tomorrow we're going to be hitting that distance learning from the point of research. What does research say works? What doesn't work? What do we need to know? We need to arm ourselves with this. I'm so excited for this tomorrow. And then Lisa Ackerman will be joining us from Taka. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.
The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and as you can see, I'm already joined by one of our guests today. Leah Hirschfeld is with us, and we're going to be joined in just a minute by Karen Nolte. And I sort of promised, I teased this to you guys last week. First, we thought it was going to be on Friday, and then it moved to today. So excited that they could be flexible. These are two amazing people from the research team at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And I just have so much respect for them, and they join us at least once a month to talk with us about research. And what I love is that they're constantly looking for how can they be helping us to enrich our lives today with the information that they learn from research. And I don't remember whether it was you, Leah, or whether it was Karen. One of you had an idea and came to me and said, is this something you're interested in? I just about plotzed. I was like, yes, this is what we need more than anything else right now. Was it you? Was it your idea?
I think I spearheaded it, but it was the research team in general. I think it was, we send out those monthly newsletters. And so also to internally for the audience, to the company. And then also on top of that, we were like, we should probably do something to the external community at large, but it was the whole R&D, so I can't take any credit. It's Dennis and Karen and CJ and everyone.
Okay, so tell our audience what the topic was. I've already teased it to them, but tell them what you guys proposed. And there's Karen. There's Karen. Welcome, Karen.
Hi there.
So thrilled to have you. I was just asking Leah to tell what the topic was that you guys had proposed to talk about that made me so excited.
And I think Shannon, I think you brought it up, but so what the topic that has come up, I think from a few viewers, at least questions, has been about remote learning, also known as distance learning, also known as online learning. When I was researching information, I had to look up all those different kinds of terms. And
also known as the biggest headache for every parent right now, and the biggest fear factor for every parent of a special needs child, you know, this day, this week, this month, this summer, the thing that we're all sweating right now. Yeah. So go ahead.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we're going to talk about that quickly before we jump into that. I'll quickly introduce myself, and I can introduce Karen, and or she can introduce herself too. But Karen and I, like Shannon said, are both part of our research team. Karen is the head of our research department, so she's a big deal. And I'm a research coordinator. And so basically what that means is that we get to spend our days, very luckily, reading research articles, exploring potential research project ideas, and then running experiments with our participants to answer questions that will address best clinical practices for our families and our patients. And the larger autism community. So it's very exciting, and I won't speak for Karen, but I think we both, I guess I will speak for Karen, both feel very lucky to be on the research team. And so what I'll jump into is the current research on distance learning. And then luckily we get Karen here who can provide more clinical information and kind of best practices to support yourself, your child, your teachers, as we all very much struggle through internet learning. So on that note, I'll jump into the research. And I was very excited about this, in part because I know Australia's done a lot of distance learning. So I was expecting a lot of information on distance learning from Australia, but actually found out that in the United States, we have had public online charter schools since the 2000s, since 1999, 2000. So this has been going on for 2 decades, which is to me just mind blowing, because I remember technology back in the 1999, 2000s, and it was not something I would want to learn on. But so this has been going on for a while. So this is not necessarily new to the larger community, though it might be new to our parents and our kiddos. So unfortunately, though, there's not a ton of research out on special education and distance learning. So I'll launch into distance learning generally, and then I'll talk about what special education research there is. And then, like I said, Karen will jump into the clinical takeaways. Thanks. And so there is a 2004 study. Again, this is 2004. So I just keep wrapping my head around these dates that I was finding. Was a study that evaluated online 3rd through 12th grade education programs. And the programs were completed from 1999 to 2004. And this is not special education. This is typical developing education. But they found that distance education had the same effect on measures of student academic achievement when compared to traditional instruction. So what that means is that they took students whose scores from state and national tests via the online education program, and then also took comparable students who had traditional education services and also looked at state and national test scores, and there was no difference. So basically the same effect, traditional distance education, you're getting the same test scores on national and state tests. Again, this is not special education. This is, our mainstream education, but if you extrapolate out there is evidence here that distance learning is effective and can get us the same results for our kids that we're hoping for. But moving on now to special education, which is the more pertinent information there. So like I said, online education for special education has been happening since the 2000s, which again, to me is just mind blowing. And I only found one study, and I'll talk about that study in a little bit. But what I did find, which was really interesting, was a survey results from special education directors. And so they talked to different states' special education directors and assessed how often or how many states were providing online education options to special education children. And so in 2009, only 3 states had a remote learning option for students with autism. By 2012, that number was 20. I don't know what that number is now, but 8 years ago, that was 20 different states had an online option for kids with autism. I'm hoping that number is higher. And I want to point out those numbers in part because, like I said, there's not much research here. But if you're getting 3 states doing this in 2009 and 20 states doing that in 2012, the reason is probably because someone wants it. School systems find this beneficial, or parents and kids are finding this beneficial. So hopefully that kind of gives a little confidence in those numbers. And like I said, by 2020, I don't know what those numbers are, but 8 years ago, almost half of the states were offering online classes and educational options for individuals with autism. Very cool. And then, like I said, I found one study that did look at teaching special education children through an online service, and that paper is from this year, 2020. The special education kiddos were not kids with autism, they were kids with hearing impairment, but still special education, so I'm going to throw it at y'all. And this was a really cool study. It was teaching special education students about atomic structure. So they ended up teaching learners, about atoms, and it was cool because of the virtual environment, they could actually interact with the atoms. They could build an atom from different periodic table elements. They could build isotopes and molecules all within that virtual environment. And at the end of the study, they did a pre-test and a post-test on students' creative and flexible thinking. And they found gains there where students really did have improvement in their flexible thinking and their creative thinking. Again, these aren't students with autism, these are students with hearing impairment. But like I said, there is some information out here that is saying that this is stressful for sure, but has good options available. And when I talk about, this is stressful, I'll launch into those negatives that we did find a little bit. So in that 2012 report, there were some disappointing perspectives. 6 of the states were concerned about the quality of the education they were providing online, and that monitoring that quality was difficult. And even one state said that almost none of their students with disabilities were receiving all of the necessary supports specified in their IEPs. That is wildly disappointing, but this is 2012, so hopefully 8 years have gone by. Hopefully there's some achievements, and that's also where we have Karen luckily joining us so that she can kind of bring into, well, what can we do also here clinically to make sure that all those IEP supports are in place, even though we're in a virtual environment. And so again, there are these concerns, and while distance learning can be beneficial to students with ASD, there definitely needs to be more emotional and social supports, along with some kind of way to have a break in between, because this is, you can only imagine, a very difficult situation. And so the big research question that still really needs to be answered is, in my opinion at least, is what accommodations can be made to the online learning environment to enrich those learning experiences. I don't have research on it. I don't think there is research on it, though. If anyone knows, please send it our way. But again, that's why we have the head of research here, Karen, to kind of talk about, strategies to make distance learning successful, and then also to answer any questions or any concerns that your viewers might have.
Okay. Karen, I hope you got something in your bag of tricks for us, because I gotta say, well, I love the information. I'm not left feeling all warm and fuzzy that like we've got this figured out.
Yes. So as parents, there's a lot that you can do. I know it's stressful, it's time consuming. There's nothing that we can really do to help those factors, but we can help your child be more successful with the online learning environment.
Okay.
One of the biggest things you can do is break the work into smaller chunks. In order to help your child be more successful with it. And that's gonna be different for every kid. So you're gonna have to know your kid a little bit in order to know how to break these things down. But I would err on the side of breaking things down into smaller chunks than you think you may need. And that may be doing one worksheet and then going and having your kid take a break and then come back and doing a second worksheet. It may be doing 2 problems and then taking a break and then coming back and doing 2 more problems. It may be watching 5 minutes of a video clip that the teacher has sent and then taking a break and then coming back. So I think if you can break them into smaller chunks and be more successful, that's gonna be much better than pushing through 2 hours with your kid and getting half of that work done, So
yeah. I got to be honest. I feel so as I'm sitting here, my head is churning and I'm going, the tough part is a lot of this is going to fall to the parent. Like I heard you say, the parent is going to have to chunk this down. And I think we were all sort of hoping that the teachers were going to have this piece together. And I think in some places that's true.
Yes.
But I keep thinking about for the parent that's, first of all, for the parent that's motivated, who says, I don't want my child to fall behind and I want them to get further. That parent's going to have to take a couple of big steps up. And maybe even potentially is going to, elevate themselves to the point where they are going to function in the role of what in the classroom would have been the instructional aid. Now, for the parent that maybe is super motivated and wants to do this, but has a job, a job in which they have to work, for that parent, I'm clutching my chest, and going, what do you do? Because you got to keep a roof over the head, but your child who's entitled to this education, I know we're all waiting to see whether they're going to approve aides going to the homes.
Yes.
And I got to say, if you're the parent with a job, I would be fighting, tooth and nail with your school district. All these school districts were talking about doing a hybrid method where they were willing to risk having the kids come to school twice a week. So I don't understand why they're not willing to risk having an aide come to your house every day. You're going to want to create a pod with that person and be super safe. But I think there's room to argue that. But I'm not hearing people getting that. I interrupted you. What else you got in your bag of tricks, Karen?
Well, to go off of what you were saying, and this is not research based at all, but I've heard some parents talking about doing pods with other families. So if you know of another family or two who is also working on distance learning, maybe you can have the kids all go to one house, have that parent work with all of the kids potentially, and then maybe the parents take turns. So I've heard that suggestion. On that same note about scheduling, if the parent's working, unless there are specific Zoom calls with the teacher, who's to say it has to be done Monday through Friday?
That's true. That's true. You could say to your teacher, I need, so there's those times when the child is there in class with you, but all the classwork that you're counting on being done afterwards, I need to be able to have it turned in on Monday, and we'll make the classroom Saturday and Sunday. Right. I would encourage people, that's a good idea. I would encourage people to get that written into their IEP, that homework can be handed in,
Yes.
to accommodate that, so that your child is never marked late. That's a very good idea. Okay, what else?
Well,
You're like Santa Claus right now, yeah?
If I can jump in quickly, there's also one of the things that Australia has seen work well too with the distance learning is exactly what you're saying, is that you don't have to be, your kid doesn't have to meet the group deadlines that you have to set in a class setting now. You can have that flexibility and say, we need 2 weeks to do this, and that's okay, because you have those one-on-one meetings, and you don't necessarily need to be at that same pace with all those kids that you're not in the physical room with anymore. So you can have that conversation with your teachers and say, we're going to do this Friday through Monday, and we'll have this done these dates versus the dates that maybe in a traditional classroom you would want to have set.
Okay. All right. Okay, Santa Claus, what else do you have in your bag?
Talking also a little bit more about the amount of time to spend on schooling at home. I've supported a number of children doing homeschooling at home. And, not that I'm an expert in homeschooling, I was supporting their ABA program around their homeschooling program. And none of the kids I've ever worked with spent 6 hours a day in homeschooling. So I think that's an important expectation to set, is that your child probably will not have 6 hours of schoolwork a day. And I would not seek out 6 hours of schoolwork a day, number one. So if you are getting that, then maybe work with the teacher. Maybe it's a little too much. And if you're not getting that, that's okay. Your child wasn't working on academics the entire time they were in the school day. So that's something to also think about and be comfortable and okay if they're not spending 6 hours a day on academics.
Okay. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not getting the same and equal and even. But if you think about it, when you're being taught something one-on-one versus when you're being taught something to a room with 30 people, then only your questions are being answered and you might be able to move through the material quicker.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's that possibility. I mean, we see that there's a very world-renowned school that there's a version of it that shares the same office complex as Card Corporate, and they only work one-on-one with kids, and they're, world-renowned, top-notch, very expensive school. And those kids, and some of them are autism, some of them are not, some of them are other special needs, and they work one-on-one, sometimes distance, sometimes in person, and they fly through their material because it's that one-on-one attention. Yeah. Okay. So what else?
Yeah, and on that note too, I want to highlight that there's so much more to school than academics. School teaches socialization, which can be hard, planning, problem solving, organization, following directions, emotional self-regulation. So even doing things like chores, even doing things like helping make dinner, reading a recipe, playing a board game, those things all target some of those skills, some to greater extents than others, gardening, reading, so incorporating those sorts of things in the day can be really helpful. And to think about, okay, what can my child do on their own while I'm working? If my child loves to read, okay, you do the reading by yourself while I'm working, and they're engaged in something productive. Or maybe, the two kids in the home can play games together, and you set some time for them to play games together. And that's going to vary depending on the kids, but don't ignore those kind of activities that are also really crucial to our kids' success.
Which goes to, somebody just asked the question, how to make distance learning more interesting. Yeah. And those things, exactly, thinking outside the box, we've covered before on the show, and we can go back to it as well, that there are so many resources online. You can stop and do a virtual walkthrough of almost any museum in the world, right? And a lot of times they're putting curriculum with that through the museum. Yes. Or there are even amusement parks that have walkthroughs. We're big fans of Universal Studios here in our house, because that's my husband's employer. And there are things that you can do where you can take a virtual ride on most of the rides. They exist on YouTube. And then you could do a physics discussion about how are they making that happen. You know what I mean? It requires being creative, but sometimes half the creativity has been done for you.
Yes.
So there's that. Somebody else says, one thing I like about distance learning in the spring was that I could see my son was struggling with certain things and I could make adjustments for him. Now I know to ask for those supports and tweaks in his IEP.
And that was one of the points I was going to say is, I've got some more tips for you guys, but parents need to ask. They need to ask, like, these modifications are in my child's IEP. How are we making them happen? And use the we. It's not how am I going to make it happen? It's how are we, because the school team should be there to support you and help figure it out. But they may be a little bit overwhelmed. So they may need you as the parent to seek out and ask that question.
But I want to point out, and we've been saying this on a regular basis, Bonnie pointed this out to us, that your school does have a legal obligation, now that they're asking for you to do some of the pickup at home with distance learning, they have a legal obligation to teach you how to do the things they're asking you to do. They can't just hand you a stack of worksheets and say, good luck with that. They have to teach you how to do it, but you must ask them. You've got to say, so here's this support that's in the IEP that maybe is already there, that you're asking that it be there, and you have to say to them, so how am I facilitating that? Who's training me and how to do that? And they legally have to give you that training.
Well, that's great.
Yeah,
sure.
Legally that's there. They must do it, but you should document it, you asking. And I don't know that I'm going to say this with love, but I don't know that they really know how to teach you how to do it, but they're going to have to figure it out. That's on their end. That's not on your end.
Sure.
but and I will say this, that a lot of parents have said that when they did step up to the plate in the spring and work with their kiddos, they saw their kiddos make more progress.
Yes.
And they saw, like this parent, oh, that's what he's struggling with. I need to ask for that to be put in the IEP. And that is, information is knowledge, right? But it does mean that at some point we have to square that with the school and get them to carry on the work that you guys have been doing. Okay, so what else have you got? Karen, are you at the end of what you've got?
Sure, I've got a little bit more. Some of these strategies, I'm sure your listeners, viewers have heard already, but use a schedule. Use a schedule, write things out, use pictures if needed to set really clear expectations, not only for your child, but for yourself as well, so you know what's going to happen. Include your child in the process as much as possible, give choices, make it really clear. First, we're doing this worksheet, then we're playing the Wii for a little bit. First, we're doing, you know, this Zoom call with your teacher, and then we get to go for a walk, whatever that may look like for your child. And I think to your point too about, you know, doing this work with your child at home, you're going to get to know them really well, and you're going to get to know what they can do, what they can't do. And I would encourage the parents to think about, okay, make a list. What can my child do of the school activities on their own? And what do they need me for? And the things that they can do on their own, you're still going to have to set the expectations, set the schedule, set a reinforcer once they complete it. But if you don't have to be there with them for those activities, that frees you up a little bit.
Okay, we got a bunch of different questions that have come in, and somebody wants to know, would what you're talking about work for people in college, university as well?
I couldn't see why not. I think you would definitely have to take into more consideration the college student themselves and what they want to do, and setting them up to be a little bit more independent. So definitely all of these things work with those components in mind.
Yeah, if you think about it, you guys, I mean, this applies to all of us in our lives, right? You know, I notice that, you know, I love doing these Zoom meetings, right? But it is a different kind of taxing than face-to-face meetings. And I've had to build into my schedule, like if I have a day, today, I pretty much have 5 hours of back-to-back Zoom, right? But anytime I got 10 minutes, I have to go walk and see the world and take that break. And at the end, if I have 8 hours of Zoom meetings, I am a different level of exhausted. I'm mentally exhausted, but I'm physically, like, because I've been sitting, right? So I have to get up and move around. And I think we all have to be mindful of these things and take breaks and make things reinforcing and change it up a little bit. That's just, you know, life. We all need that. We have somebody who's writing in from India. And they are saying that they have a 3-year-old child and they are using the term MR. That is not a term that we use here in the United States anymore. We say developmentally disabled, but they are asking for a recommendation. Her IQ is 56. Now at 3, this child does not have to do distance learning, which is the topic we're talking about. But I think that we could all agree that a 3-year-old with a developmental delay is somebody who could benefit from some really intensive ABA. Yes. That is not necessarily funded unless she also has an autism diagnosis, and in India that may not be funded in any case. But I you know, I'd love to hear what you guys say, but I would love to encourage this person to maybe look at IBT, the Institute for Behavioral Training, and get trained themselves in some things that they can do that will help their child to learn and grow. You guys, anything you want to add?
Yes, I would just definitely echo ABA would be great for that child, and as much as the parent can provide themselves, the better if no other services are available. There are also, in addition to IBT, you know, definitely look at different books. Potentially Catherine Maurice's, oh my goodness, I just had the title and it just flew out of my head. Let Me Hear Your Voice, I believe. That's a parent talking about early on in ABA, their struggles in getting ABA for their child. But I think that gives a good guidance as to how to, you know, maybe if you've got to do this program on your own, some supports there. And there are definitely some other resources that I can look into and maybe provide.
There you go. I also know that in India, there is a large community of OTs, and there is some OT therapy that is pretty widely available in India, and I would certainly participate in that. Get yourself some support there. But I really want to encourage, as much as I love and respect the OT community in India, I still firmly believe that your child will do more and do better if you're doing ABA in conjunction with OT. And I know that that's less available, but there's more and more available online. You'll find some of that at ibehavioraltraining.com. There's also skills. Once you know what it is you're doing, you'll want to look at skillsforautism.com for a curriculum. We have lots and lots of parents in India who use skills and IBT together to help their children.
And just a couple little notes. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
A couple little notes there just to help the parent now. Talking to your child a lot helps more than you think. Just modeling lots of language and requiring your child to use language with you, to use the language that they have. That's something that you can do now to start with, and just play with your child as well.
There you go. We only have 30 seconds left, ladies. Any last thoughts?
I have one quick one, and this just popped in my head, but also I would recommend, don't be afraid to ask for help from your extended family if you have it. If you trust your extended family, if you have a grandma who misses their grandson or granddaughter, ask them to play hangman with your child, or tic-tac-toe, or set out a clue game and your child can move it around. I've done that. Or just have the child FaceTime and tell them what they see. All of that, like Karen said, is great input. It's lovely for the other person potentially who really is missing that input as well. So don't be afraid to ask for help from your extended family. It takes a village.
Absolutely. And be doing that now before school starts so that they're getting used to interacting with people online. Ladies, thank you so much. I appreciate you more than you know. We'll keep checking in. I think a year from now, the research on distance learning for the special needs community is going to be robust.
Yes, I agree.
Wish we had the benefit of all that knowledge now, but we will, I guess we'll be the guinea pigs.
Yep, pretty much.
So that's what we'll do. All right, ladies, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
We're staying because our next guest, who's joining us right now via Zoom, is somebody that it's such a privilege to call her a friend. Oh my goodness. Somebody that I admire hugely, Lisa Ackerman, who is the founder of Taka. And she is there. Traven, if you want to tell her to start tell her to start her camera. I'm just looking at a question that somebody just wrote in. There's Ms. Ackerman.
Sorry, I was multitasking.
No, you're so good. You're so good and you look great. And it's so good to see you. It's just like, it brings a tear to my eye. I haven't seen you in the longest time.
No, that's
But you look good.
Thank you. You look good too. How are you being?
I'm keeping on. That's what it's all about.
Right.
So as I was saying, I was just saying how privileged I feel to call you friend, and how you're somebody that I love and respect and admire. And you're the founder of an amazing organization, Taka, which stands for the Autism Community in Action. You guys do some pretty amazing things, and that's kind of what you're here to talk with us about.
Yeah.
So let's open this conversation, Ms. Ackerman. What's going on over at Taka?
Oh, we're just, feet up, nothing happening.
I can't like that. That's a level of sarcasm I can't even get my hands wrapped around, right?
Oh, I always feel like when I come on with you, we're just hanging out and talking and laughing and crying over stuff. I mean, in the 20 years doing this, I say each year, it's just such a crazy time. This is the craziest, busiest I've ever been.
Right.
And everything you can count on has gone out the window, and every day is a new day, and you have to make multiple decisions multiple times. And it's just frustrating as heck, but we're not here to talk about that. The families going through everything.
I don't know why, but sometimes your audio is going lower, and sometimes it doesn't seem to be attached to that.
Oh, no.
I don't know. Well, but I can hear you now. So, and we could hear you all along. It dips. So I don't know. And I don't want to miss a word because you always say good things. But yeah, it's a crazy, crazy time. And I know, I certainly feel like the families need more than ever before. And since that's what you serve, I'm sure that you have been juggling chainsaws since this started to make sure you can help people.
And again, if I ever have a bad day, I know families have it 20 times harder. And that's what I try to stay focused on. And it's so strange that it's the ADA 30th anniversary.
Right.
And thinking of that this week and all of the things that our parents are tackling and facing perhaps another school year that's distance learning. And I mean, we're hearing reports back, Shannon, it's just breaking our heart. They're aggression, OCD, self-interest behaviors, wandering, and really looking at, for regular, typical kids, typical ed kids, regular ed as I like to call it, they lost a school year, and that's really noticeable. For our kids, there are some families reporting they're losing up to 3 years of skills in this period of time. So we're working on tools, working on how we can support we've pivoted completely over a weekend virtually. So all of our meetings are available. Everything is available. COVID tools, tips on how to get your kid to wear a mask, tips on how to get them to wash their hands more regularly, all the things that we've been tasked with, we're building tools around it. So homeschooling, all of that's been updated. We have 40 articles that have been updated on our website since we shut down during COVID. So it's a big focus on how do we support families today with the challenges and the hurdles they're facing. So I'm blown away. They're my heroes. Jeff's in college, so he's pretty easy breezy. I have him make dinner, once or twice a week. And he takes out the trash. I mean, he's a joy, but he misses his friends. He misses being in the dorm room 5 days a week.
What year of college is he about to be in, Lisa?
A senior, which completely bum city, but it's everyone's got their stuff.
Yeah. My kid's about to be a senior in high school. So this is not how I planned on it being, and nobody planned on it being like this.
No.
But so, I know people are salivating here. We've got people starting to write in questions. So these 40 articles, about things that they can be doing and the help that they're looking for, where are we finding them, Lisa?
Yeah. Tacanow.org, TACANOW.org. If you go to the family parent resources, if you land on each of the pages, so we have 6 pages of support, it will highlight the new articles for you. So if you're just interested in the new ones, land on the education page, the medical page, or whatever page you're interested in, and it will highlight the most newest articles. If you need COVID support, anything to do with COVID, that's right off the front page. It's a big graphic that says COVID. That will help guide you into all the COVID tools. So, have at it. Our team is the best. We have the best team. And they're doing a tremendous job getting information told so families have support right now today.
There you go. Do you have a fan going? Is that maybe what's making the audio go in and out?
If I turn off that fan, I
all right, then we're gonna tough it out. We can hear you. We can hear you. I just think it might be because we have good sound and then it dips down, and I'm just trying to figure out what. It's okay.
It's so volume, but as soon as I close my office door, it goes up 20 degrees.
I understand completely.
We're
and
in cheap rent.
We want you alive, and so we're just going to deal with the dipping audio. Yes. Because we're trained in this. We have expectations, and then we pivot, right? That's what being autism parents is all about. So there we go. Okay, so I think that one of the most exciting things in the world is when somebody can get to one of your conferences. Oh. And it's not easy, and not everybody can. And I keep saying from the beginning of time, we have to look for all of the blessings we can find in COVID, because this is a period of time in which different rules apply and people are doing things differently. And this too shall pass. And we need to take advantage of everything we can during this COVID. Now, normally you would be having a conference in the fall that people would be trying to get to, and you have conferences in the spring and in the fall, and the fall is the one that's usually on the West Coast, correct? Am I in the right?
Here.
So, and that usually happens in October. And a lot of times I hear parents are like, I would just do almost anything to be able to be there, but I can't because I'm not available that week, or I don't have anybody to be with my kid. I don't have the money to fly, blah, 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 blah. There's a million excuses, right? But this year it's going to be different. And you have some pretty exciting news for us because this year, I think everybody can come.
We're really excited. So COVID, I curse you, but COVID has brought out the most ingenious behaviors in this team. And we're taking the conference to families, and it's going virtual, and it's everything you want in a virtual conference. So we looked at other virtual conferences outside the autism community to see what we liked and didn't like. And what we decided was to do a hybrid. So it literally takes what we think will be better for families. So some conferences allow you to attend for specific days. And we don't want to do that because, when you're at home and the kids see you, regardless if you're holed up in your bedroom or an office or the garage or in your car. I've had a family watch videos in her car with the door locked and what have you. Your kids still know you're there. They know you're there, and they have to eat 3 times a day. They have issues, and therapists may be coming over still. God, hoping that's the case. So you get interrupted a bazillion times. So what we've done was we created the conference with all the content that families normally want, from the legal side, the medical side, the learning side, beginner side, adult side, college side, all of that. You can watch all of the lectures, all of the content we bring to you that would be physically at a conference. This is our 34th conference, is going to be all online, and you have 31 days. So we picked October has 31 days. So we didn't rip you off, not 28, not 30, but 31 days that you can watch all of the sessions. So you can start and stop a session 15 times, and it doesn't matter. You can go back to it, watch it 3 times. You'll be able to get all the content that we normally do. Then we struggled, Shannon, we love our community. I mean, most of the conferences, you walk in, you get a hug, and you go to the mentor table and you ask your questions and you plan your day. We're doing all of the support, the community, in a private Facebook group. So when you register, you get added to that group. We're going to do our Q&A there. So we'll tell you in the next day or two, this person for this topic, their Q&A is going to be live in Facebook. We're going to do special exclusive content in that Facebook group. But then more importantly, you could go up there and say, hey, I got a senior in high school. I want to get my kid in college. These are my issues. What do I do? And we can have someone jump on that, answer those questions, guide you, and get you into the next step. Other parents could chime in and say, this is what we did. This is how we function. This is how we solve that problem. And then if there's a doctor in the group and there's a physician question, we will tag them in that group and ask them to answer and participate in the questions. So
proud of you. This is amazing. I'm so proud of you that you're doing this. This is if I could do anything, this would have been my dream. And I'm so glad that you're doing it so I don't have to. Can I just say, no, I mean, I'm just being honest. Thank you. Because I think this is what the families need. And, I know that you've got a special going on tomorrow.
Right.
Talk to us about that, because there is a cost for the conference, because this is not, even doing it this way, there's an expense to it and you've got to cover your expenses. So there is a cost to it, but there's a deal tomorrow that's off the chain.
Yeah, usually our conferences, you get closer, it can be about $100 to register for 3 days. Tomorrow we're opening registration first day at $25. So
and what does that cover? That $25?
Everything we talked about. So you have access to the community, the support, the lectures, PowerPoints, everything. And really, that just helps us cover the cost of getting this information out to families.
$25 for 31 days filled with stuff that you can start and stop, and you can be asking questions and be meeting with other parents and hearing experts talk. And you can take as much of it on as you want. You could do all 31 days, or you could show up for one day.
Right.
Most conferences, if you went for 1 hour, would be over $100. So for $25 for a full month, it is like craziness. But that's just if you pre-register tomorrow. Then the price will go up a little bit.
Yeah, it goes up to $49 the next day. And that's generally where we start registration, is the lowest price is $49. Oh, and I forgot to mention, we have a virtual exhibit hall. So if there are vendors that you're interested in, or a speech pathologist or an attorney or what have you, we'll have a virtual exhibit hall where you have access to their information and access to how to contact them. So there's the 3 components. Sorry, I forgot one.
No, I mean, I love that. I gotta say, I want to talk to you about that for Autism Live, because I've always wanted to have an Autism Live booth. I just can't. If I come to your conference, I want to be at your conference, and I don't want to be at the booth, and I don't have enough staff to do both of that. So I've never done it, because I just can't be 2 places at one time. And personally, I enjoy the conference so much that I don't want to be there talking about Autism Live. But if you're doing it virtually, I might be able to do that. That's very exciting.
Consider yourself invited, and we'll figure out what the heck you want to do.
Right.
And it's done.
All right, fabulous. And this is one of the things I love about you. You have more energy than any 12 people I know. We call you the Energizer Bunny behind your back, in the nicest possible way.
3 cups of coffee today.
There we go. So this is incredible, but where do people go tomorrow to get the $25 deal?
Just go to TACANOW, TACANOW.org, and click on conference, and registration will be right there.
Okay.
We're also going to be opening up scholarships to families. I found one partner, hoping to get one more, where we can scholarship families. So we'll be announcing that too.
Here's what I want to commit to right now. I'd like to pay for 4 people. So I wish I was made of money so I could do more, but that's the very least that I can do. I would like to scholarship 4 people to go.
I love you. Do you know how much I love you? I just love you.
I wish I could be more generous than that. I want to remind you and everybody else that Taka was, I'm gonna cry. Taka was very generous to me on a Christmas when I needed it more than anything else. So that's the very least that we could do, is scholarship for 4 people. Stop. Now you got me emotional.
Stop. And I just stop it. I think you together, we're bonded for the rest of our lives, girl. That's how it rolls.
Well, that's what I said. I mean, this is how crazy the autism community is that I remember being I was never young as a parent. I had my child at 40, almost 41. But as a new parent in the autism community, and I was lost, right? Like everybody starts on day 1. I was lost and looking for answers. And everybody was like, oh, there's this group, this Taka group. And I, I remember hearing about this woman who founded it and who was just this amazing person who knew everything. And, that's why I said I feel so privileged that now, all these years later, that I get to call you friend. Stop. It's just too good. And that can happen for, everybody one of the things that I love about going to a Taka conference is that you walk in and there's nothing but hugs for you. You found your tribe. You have arrived, you are there, and everybody understands that everybody's story is different, but you are welcome no matter what your story is. You have that in common. And when you go to a conference that's not a Taka conference, it's a different conference, but Taka is there, you see the herd of people come in the Taka t-shirts, and you know exactly who they are. They're the people having the most fun. It's amazing. And it's not all women. I love that you have dads galore more than any other group. You have dads, young and old, and everything in between that are there. You guys rock it. I need my tissues. But I do love
you. You're our walking infomercial. Not that we need, every other time period we do stuff for free. The conference, it takes such a tremendous effort. There's just no way to do that for free, unless you know Daddy Warbucks who wants to, pop off a check for us. We do things to get as much out as we can to families and support them, but it's the one thing that has a fee.
There you go. But $25, you guys. And I know that it's short notice and sometimes your budget is such, but if you really, and let's just be honest, because there was a time and Taka was there for me that Christmas where $25 was more than I had. There have been way more times in my life than I'd like to admit where $25 was the difference of whether we ate or not. And so if that is the case for you, please do not be embarrassed or ashamed by that. Been there, done that. I hope better days are coming for you, but ask about a scholarship. We know that they're at
we
least
have a toll-free number if folks want to call in. It's 855-726-7810.
Do you want to give that number again?
Yeah, 855-726-7810. We answer the phones 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. And so if you want to call and ask for a scholarship, or you want to email us, info @takanow.org, we could forward your information along to apply for a scholarship. So there should be no hurdle to this. If you put your kids to sleep, you could easily get 4 sessions in a night. Easily. Yeah. And then sneak in on the Facebook group when your kid's having a break or watching TV or doing something that you could go in and then ask questions.
And you probably don't know who all your speakers and all your people are right now. And even if you did, you probably wouldn't want to, tell them this early. But let me just tell you, folks, there's something for everyone. So many of you write in and say, I don't know what to do about biomedical. Or my child, I have questions about this sort of behavior that my child is doing, that they're spitting or whatever. Like, she is somebody always for everything. You are going to get more information from more doctors. I know they ask me all the time, Lisa, here about MedMaps and MedMap doctors and what they can do for our kids. Last night, we had a question about, what would be the point of seeing a neurologist? Is there any benefit to seeing a neurologist if I have a child on the autism spectrum? And, my thing is, go to a conference, a Taka conference, and not only will you get the questions that you have answered, but there will be so much information that you will leave going, okay, I didn't even know about this, that, and the other. And that's really, your battery will be recharged. You're going to hear stories of hope. You're going to see progress, but you're also going to be surrounded by other parents who are going through it. That reminds you, you're not alone. Right. So I just always love the variety of the people that you have speaking at your conferences.
Oh, thank you. And one of the things we're going to pay particular attention to this year is, what about COVID and IEPs? What do we do about compensatory services? How do we navigate homeschooling, distance learning, and virtual hell? Sorry.
Yeah.
Some kids,
I'm with you on this.
They love the box. They look at the box and they're like, I'm fascinated. And other kids are like, well, you can't stop me. Boom.
Exactly. And I got to tell you that October is going to be a real turning point. That, by that point, we're going to know where we're going to be in January, and we're going to be in the middle of things. And it's going to be a good time to get that. Because right now, I have a meeting this afternoon with my son's school to talk about the distance learning plan. And I know that 9/10 of what they're going to say is, we don't know yet. We don't know yet. We don't know yet. Because they don't. And I can't ask them to look into a crystal ball and tell me. But by October 1st, you're going to have an idea whether your school has it handled or not. And you're going to need some help and information about when the answer is they don't have it.
Right.
And you're going to see how much you are responsible for and how much help you need. So it's really a good time, Lisa. And I can't believe that it's for the whole month. Yeah. You're a crazy person.
I am. I've been accused of that many times. Yes.
But it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. And it makes me emotional. And I'm grateful that you're going to be doing that.
It's a team. this team is the best team, and it's all the creative brains of a lot of people who just nothing but care about families and their kids. And we get together and we say that idea can be better. So we always work and challenge each other. And our number one goal is making sure families feel the support and get the help they need. And so, we have occupational therapists coming on, speech therapists, the legal team is going to be a big presence. We'll have adults with autism speaking, and then the slew of medical professionals that are world renowned, like Dr. Kriegsman, who saved my kid, gastroenterologist, who is just one of the best in the world, will be there talking about my favorite topic, poop.
Right?
If an hour goes by and I haven't said the word poop, it's just not normal for me.
Love it.
We also,
Love it.
we just got confirmation, I don't know, for the folks that love the Real Housewives, we have Jacqueline Larita coming on, and she's just a sweetheart, and she'll be talking about her kid Nicholas and what's going on. So, I mean, there's something for everybody.
There is. There is. And the community, if nothing else, to be a part of that Facebook group. Now, will the Facebook group only be for the month of October, or is it going to start before?
We'll start it up and invite people as they register. I think it will be for the month of October, but we'll open it up a little early to get people going and understanding where everything is and what to do. That will be kind of your tour guide for the material, the conference, and answering questions. When October 31st and everyone's putting on their Halloween gear and, getting ready, we will offer to transition you to our Hope and Health group, which has right now over 11,000 people in it, getting support every day. So support won't stop. It will keep going. If you want to keep playing, we will roll you in and make sure you have support. So that $25 really is buying you a support package that carries on.
That's pretty incredible. $25. But again, it's only $25 tomorrow, which is Wednesday, July 29th, if you're watching this recorded. Wednesday, July 29th is the day to get the $25 price. Otherwise, it's going to cost you $49. So save yourself some money, get that booked in for October. I don't know where you think we're wearing our Halloween costumes to, but here, at least here in Los Angeles, Halloween's already been canceled.
You don't wear your costume around the house?
No. But maybe now, having said that, maybe we need to have a virtual Halloween party so that everybody can wear their costume and we can maybe that's what we need to do. I'll get right on that.
Yeah, I have a butterfly costume. It's the wings and the antlers and a tutu. That goes over everything, and every year I'm the butterfly again.
Well, I don't know if you know, Nancy Allspaw Jackson and I, Halloween is an event for us. We always dress up and it's always this big reveal and whatever. I hadn't even given two thoughts to that this year.
Well, my favorite was Lucy and Ethel.
Yeah, I think that was well, her Lucy was incredible. My Ethel looked like a fat Martha Washington, but other than that, Mrs. Lincoln. The wig was all wrong, the dress was all wrong. I'm trying to think which one. My favorite was when we dressed as the two queens. I was Queen Elizabeth now, and she was the previous Queen Elizabeth. And it's good to be the queen. Yeah. That's all I have to say. It's good to be the queen. Yes, exactly. And yes, so there we have it. All right, we are out of time, but I don't want to leave without saying that TACA is a wealth of information every day of the week. Every day of the year. And if people go to TACANOW, it's TACAnow.org. I think it's the best website for autism, and especially for autism parents, that there is. So there's more information there. It's, you could I did a talk the other day for a group of parents, and I said, I could send you to two websites and you could spend, the next 6 months and dive in. And I said TACA, especially for parents, but I also think if you have teens or you yourself are on the spectrum, I do recommend wrongplanet.net. But between those two websites, I think you have it covered. So that's saying a lot coming from me. Okay, somebody wrote in something and said, no anti-vax groups for me. I don't think that TACA would even remotely be considered an anti-vax group. Am I wrong?
Well, we have families that have their own beliefs, and we let every family have their own beliefs. There's not one set or beliefs that we tell you to fall into. So whether you believe vaccines play a role or don't, we still support you and put you on the right path. So we need to make the kids the front and center of getting the help they need and getting the support they need. And we need to move on. That's just not, you don't have to have a coupon one way or the other of who you are to come in and play.
Yeah. And there's so much to talk that is absolutely amazing about having your child be healthy. And I think to label anything is a gross misunderstanding of what happens. So I would bet you that everybody would find something that they would absolutely enjoy and learn from at TACA. So I've said that. Okay. Okay. Just reading some of the things, but that's all perfect and wonderful. And thrilled that you were here to chat with us, and you're going to be joining us a little bit later on tonight. Some of you know that I do a group at night on Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays that are just card parents, and I apologize that you guys don't get to be a part of that conversation too, but Lisa's going to be joining us there for those of you who are card parents, not to be missed. Yeah. So Lisa, thank you so much for being here. It is 11 o'clock straight up. I adore you. Can't wait to talk to you later on.
I appreciate you, and thank you for having me on. And I appreciate that we're focused just on helping families have the best possible outcome. That's our agenda.
That is the agenda always. Love it. Love you.
Love you too.
I'm not even good at making the heart thing. I have a tissue because I cried. All right. See you later. We're out of time, you guys. So I'm going to go too. Don't forget that tomorrow we have Dr. Doreen Grampiche answering your questions on the show. And on Thursday, we have Dr. Evelyn Gould. She was a regular way at the beginning of Autism Live. She's back to talk about acceptance commitment therapy. That's not to be missed. She's a favorite, right? A fan favorite, one of my favorites. So can't wait for her to be joining us back where it all began. All right, until tomorrow, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.
The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. It's a great day to be here with us because we are live and look who we have. We have Dr. Doreen Grampiche. So excited to have her here with us this morning. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're coming to you live. It is Wednesday, July 29th. So excited to be here with you guys. So we're going to be live for the next hour with Dr. Grampiche. She's going to be answering your questions. I want to give you a quick rundown of how you can connect with us. Right now, you can be with us live at www.autism-live.com. You can be watching us live there. You can also comment in the comment section on that site. But you can also be watching us live on Facebook, on YouTube, on Periscope, and on Twitter. We're live in all those places. And in particular, I know there are a lot of you that write in questions on YouTube and Facebook. We can see them. There is a little bit of a delay, so make sure you put in your questions early, right? Go ahead and start writing in your question right now. By the way, later on, you can still watch us in all of those places recorded, but then we podcast to iTunes, Deezer, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. All of those places. And we have a couple of new places that are coming up in the coming months where we're going to be podcasting to as well. If there is some place that you like to listen to your podcast and we are not available there, please bring it to our attention, because we love to make it available to everyone. It is free, by the way, in all of those places. We are a free download on iTunes, and you get to choose whether on iTunes, whether you want it with picture and sound, or if you just want the sound. Take us on a hike, take us on a road trip. We're happy to go with you, right? We have well over, I think this month marks the 9th. We are celebrating a 9-year anniversary of doing a show in this format. How's that? So there are thousands of videos for you to watch on YouTube, or you can watch them on our homepage. So check those out and write in the questions that you have about anything that you've seen or that you would like to see. We love to hear from you. So I mentioned that Dr. Grant-Pichet is here, and she's here to answer your questions. She is an amazing expert in the field of autism. I believe the preeminent expert in the field of autism. She has been working in this field for 40 years. I don't like to tell on her. I know she's proud of it, but like then people go, oh, you must be older than we think you are. And that's not necessarily a bad thing either. So I don't know why I'm putting my stuff on it, but she's an expert in this field, has worked with from small babies up through senior citizens on the autism spectrum, founded the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and founded the wonderful charity that we love, Autism Care Today. So she's answering your questions. We do have to give you the disclaimer. I am going to let her talk in a minute. I feel like I'm on a car sales commercial. I'm going so fast. But we do have to give you the disclaimer that there is no expert in any field that could give individual specific advice in this format. It just doesn't work that way. So please write in your questions. Remember that she can't give you an individual specific answer, but please be as specific as possible in what you write in, so that gives her as much information. I always like it when you include the closest major city to you. We don't want your home address. Please don't be mistaken. But if you tell me you live in St. Louis, the answer that we're going to give you is different than the answer we're going to give you if you live in Philadelphia, because the resources aren't the same. Wish they were. Wish it was one size fits all, but it's not. So there we go. Having said all that, welcome, Dr. Grant-Pichet.
Thank you very much, Shannon, and good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be back and looking forward to answering as many questions as we can today.
Let's whip through them. I want to start with some that I promised that we would get to. My daughter will have outbursts of aggression behaviors with attacking or scratching. What could be the cause?
Right. So for many of our viewers, as you know, every child has a different thing that's going on. And as behavior analysts, the very, very first thing we have to do when we have a behavior that is challenging is to ask ourselves, what is the function? And so in this case, it could be a lot of different things. And until we know why she's doing those particular behaviors, we really can't address how to change them, how to reduce them, how to replace them. The idea is to figure out what is the function, why is she doing those things, and then to replace the behavior with something more appropriate.
I want to say, Dr. Grant-Pichet, I want you to know that this parent has a great supervisor and is working with a great ABA team. So, because sometimes we get a question like that and they don't have an ABA team, but this person I know does.
Right.
So,
and that's something really important, because you can easily just contact your supervisor and say, I'm very concerned about this particular behavior. And your supervisor will then conduct what's called an FBA, a functional behavior assessment. And they will try to figure out what your child is trying to communicate. Because remember, all of the challenging behaviors and all of the sort of self-stimulatory types of behaviors, or scratching, whatever it might be, there's a reason, right? Our kids do these things either for some reason. And it's super important to find out what that reason is, because if you don't know what the reason is and you just prevent the behavior, it's going to come back in some other form. So I think the best course of action here would be to ask your supervisor to conduct an FBA on this behavior, and then they should be able to intervene and help you and give you an answer. And I'm happy to kind of validate, let's say, their treatment plan. If you talk to your supervisor and get a plan, then you can always come back to us. You can email Shannon, and we will be happy to take a look at the plan and say yes or no, this is the right thing to do.
Okay. I also want to say for our CARD parents that are watching, some of you know that CARD is the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. That's where my son was treated. It's the place that Dr. Grant Pichet founded. Incredible quality ABA, the top of the line, the best. For our CARD parents, I do nightly meetings. And tonight I'm doing an orientation about something that's very unique to CARD called caregiver collaboration. It's an ideal time to talk about these kinds of things. If you are a CARD parent, join us tonight. Look at your email to see the invite for me. It's invite only, where we're going to be talking about how you utilize that time with your supervisor to answer questions like this. So just want to put that out there. Next question, can CARD provide services in a school setting if the district will pay for it?
Yeah, absolutely. And we've been doing that for a long time and many years. And we've contracts already, master contracts with, I think, the majority of the districts in the country. And yeah, so it's right now, I'm not sure how that would work because a lot of schools are out of session or not physically open. But in general, what happens, of course, is that the district classifies, we are what's called a non-public agency. That gives us the ability to receive funds from school districts and Department of Education. So the district then holds an IEP with your child, with you. And if it's determined that your child needs a little bit of support, for instance, which falls under the category of related services, that's where we come in. And the support can be all kinds of stuff. It could be having an in-class aide just for your child, and that could be one of our folks. And that's probably the most common, where we have one of our BTs, one of our behavior technicians in the school, in the classroom with your child, specifically there for a variety of purposes that are written in the IEP. Either to help increase social behavior, or to help the child pay attention, or to keep up academically, whatever it might be. And there are other things too. For instance, sometimes districts will contract with CARD to get a BCBA to go in and help provide programming and treatment plans or behavior intervention plans for a bunch of kids. So we have all kinds of relationships with districts, and we're happy to help whenever they allow us to go in.
Wonderful. And I want to make sure everybody knows that if you have specific legal questions, Bonnie Yates is with us on Monday, and she has asked for specific legal questions dealing with the school district, what they're giving you, what they're saying to you, so on and so forth. That's for Monday. Write those in to us as well, and I'll bank those for her for Monday. Okay, next question. My son is nonverbal with autism and ADHD diagnosis. No aggressive behaviors, but he stims a lot, especially his hands, and twists his fingers a lot. How can we help him?
Yeah, so these are, I wish it's hard for me to answer these questions because I never know really what the function is. So it's a little bit more complicated when you have both ADHD and autism, because the child is very inattentive and might even be hyperactive. I'm not even sure what type of ADHD could also be combined, where you have both. But I'm just trying to envision the type of child or what the child is experiencing. Twisting fingers or wringing their hands or doing things like this could also be related to ADHD medication. So maybe this parent can write in and give us a little bit more information, because the medication for ADHD are stimulants, right? Adderall, Ritalin, etc. And these types of medications generally will increase your heart rate a little bit, and they produce these types of behaviors. So I wonder if the child had these behaviors prior to being, I wonder if the child's even on ADHD medication. And if he or she is, then the question is, did these behaviors exist before that? If they did not, then I would probably go and talk to the physician and ask for a drug holiday. So take the child off the medication for a period of time and see if the behavior goes away. If they did exist and have nothing at all to do with the medication, then you would have to do, again, a functional behavior assessment and figure out what are the times specifically. Does the child do these behaviors more when they're excited, anxious, when a demand has been placed? Is the child trying to get out of an activity? Is the child doing this to self-soothe? I mean, there's a million different reasons. And that is kind of where a good behavior analyst can come in and do an FBA.
This person also has a really good BCBA.
Great. Because, for people out there, Shannon, as you know, if you have a BCBA and they can do a good functional behavior assessment for you, you're good to go. If you don't, one of the things we built for families is called the indirect functional assessments, and it's called the CARD Indirect Functional Assessment, CIFA. And we put this on our skills website. So if you guys go to skillsforautism.com, there should be an ability, you should have the ability to access the CIFA, C-I-F-A. Hopefully it's still there, right, Shannon? And
it's definitely still there.
Yeah, and there's a series of questions. That is an indirect assessment. So it basically it doesn't work directly with the child, it goes through you as the parent. And it'll ask you a bunch of questions about the behavior, and it'll help you identify the function, like why is the behavior happening? And when you know the function, then that information goes into a BIP, which also exists there. We have another tool called the BIP Builder. And then that helps you. BIP stands for Behavior Intervention Plan. So you kind of need to understand the reason, the function, then that feeds into a behavior intervention plan. And then a treatment plan, that's the treatment plan, is based on that function, the reason. So without knowing what the function is, it's very hard to give a treatment plan, because behaviors could have different reasons, and you don't want to deal with each behavior in a way that it'll cause a lot of confusion, and we might be taking away rewards that unnecessarily, or we won't be effective until we know the function.
Okay, since you brought up skills, I have a message from Skills and IBT that I want to tell everybody. I want to encourage everybody to get a pen and paper ready, or get a place on your phone where you can write down notes for a quick second. So Skills is the wonderful curriculum that Dr. Grampiche is talking about, and IBT is a website. It's ibehavioraltraining.com, where you can learn all kinds of things about how to interact with your kiddos. They've got a lot of free stuff for you right now. They are continuing to offer their registered behavior technician 2.0 trainings to parents on a case-by-case basis. If you will call them, and talk to them about why you would like to take the same training that therapists take, they're willing to give that to many parents for free on a case-by-case basis. There's a phone number to call to get that. The phone number is 877-975-4559. So if you're like, I want to know everything that my therapists know that are registered behavior technicians, I want to understand what they're doing. And, normally there's a cost for that. It would be around $440 if I'm not mistaken. And they're giving away to parents if parents are motivated and say that they're going to do the training. You got to call that number, 877-975-4559. They are also giving away their parent trainings. If you missed it during the summer, they offered different parent trainings for free. They're offering the full parent training for parents at no cost. If you are interested and want to do the training, they're video trainings and they're amazing. And it's that same number, 877-975-4559. That deal is not going to last much longer. So if you missed out on those free trainings, get on that right now. They are also offering weekly free trainings for educators. Now, you might be an educator, and if we're all home with our kids this fall, we're all going to be educators, right? But you may also want to get this for a teacher that you know or tell them about it. What they want to do is go to the IBT website, which is ibehavioraltraining.com. You want to click on educators and follow that down until you go to useful strategies. Those are available at no cost. You need to put in the promo code COVID, all capitals, COVID -19. Or if you have trouble with that, you can use the same number and call them 877-975-4559. So that is what I wanted to let you guys know about that. Dr. Grampiche, I want to move over to some questions that have come in live. There's one parent who has written in a small novel. But it's good, and I appreciate, because we always say give us lots of details. So she said, "Hi, I'm a skills user and a big fan of Dr. Grampiche. Aren't we all? But welcome." And they said, "So excited to be able to ask a question during the live streaming. Hopefully my question can get picked. I'm picking it, but it's got several components to it. My boy is 20 years old with language ability around 4 years old. He's not very responsive to his environment in the natural setting. When parents, therapists ask him questions such as, what are you watching? What time is it now, etc., he knows the answer. He is able to answer properly most of the time in the natural setting. However, when his younger sister, aunt, uncles, neighbors, friends, or parents ask him the same question and reward him later, I think I might have missed part of it, Traven, and reward him later based on the number of clicks. So I think there's something there that I missed. This doesn't result in change, and he tends to click all over the place. Do you have good suggestions? Traven, I think I'm missing a piece of what you sent me.
Shannon, can you read that again? When people reward him from there on?
I think there's a section missing. So I think what she started to say here, when his younger sister, aunt, uncles, neighbors, friends, or parents ask him questions, and then it got cut off, and where it picks back up, Traven, is it says, and rewards him later based on number of clicks. So I think something got cut off, Traven, and it's like the most important part. Anyway, she does say, as soon as his therapist walks into the environment and has his younger sister ask him again, he usually will respond to the younger sister. So I think when other people are asking, he's not responding. She says, we've tried a token system and given him a token every time he responds properly to other people's questions in the natural setting, but this requires the therapist to be there with him, and during the time the therapist is not there, his responsiveness remains problematic. To fix this, okay, I see, it's mixed up. To fix this, we also have tried a self-monitoring strategy and given him a counter and allow him to click for himself every time he responds to others, even when the therapist or parent aren't there, and rewards himself later based on the number of clicks. This doesn't result in a significant change, and he tends to click all over the place. Do you have any good suggestions? Okay, I think we got it. Do you have it? I think I understand the gist of it.
I sort of get the gist of it, I think. I have a couple of suggestions here, not knowing this young man. I don't know if, so using a counter to, like a clicker to reward, whether he's doing it himself or someone else is doing it, just increases the number of utterances. It doesn't increase the quality or the content. It doesn't improve what he's saying. It just increases the utterances. So assuming that he would have memorized a few responses, things like, what's your name? How are you? How old are you? Standard responses. Those are things that he might be responding to. If his language level is 4 years old, I think we shouldn't be focusing necessarily right now on just increasing his responses. Having said that, I mean, there's another issue here as well. So I'm kind of first thing is that what you're telling me is that your therapist gets better response level than everybody else. So that first needs to be fixed, and that's an easy thing. That's basically just the therapist spending more time with everyone else and then fading themselves out. The therapist should be able to do that. The therapist starts by giving the instruction or the question, and he responds, and then have the younger sister, let's say, reward him instead of the therapist. Then the next step is the therapist, let's say, says part of the question or is just present and helps the younger sister, but the younger sister says the question and gives the reward. And the therapist gradually then removes himself from the room. So it's a process. It doesn't happen in one or two takes. It essentially takes a while for the therapist to classically condition to the other people and then leave. And the bottom line is, what was the therapist doing that made the therapist an effective discriminative stimulus, but nobody else's? And the answer to that is probably the therapist had more consistent interaction, or had spent a lot more time with him, working on these things with him. So he realized that when this therapist is here, I have to respond. And when other people are here, they don't really force me to respond. That's pretty common. So you just need to make sure that other people, the younger sister, cousins, whoever else is in his environment, are exactly following the same procedures that the therapist was, and that the therapist is present, but gradually not helping as much, but fading themselves out of the picture. That's the first thing. But the second thing is the content of what you're doing. I'm not sure having him increase his utterances with using a counter is the most important thing for this young man right now. I think you should probably reevaluate and you can do this also through skills. I was going to say you should reevaluate what's the most important content for him right now. What are your goals for him on the bigger picture type of thing? And we do have a skills program, which is for adolescents and adults. And if you go in there and answer a lot of questions, it will help you identify a really, really good overall treatment plan that's not just language. Because when you're 20, language is very important. And by the way, you could also assist his communication by giving him a visual format to communicate with language, even though he has 4-year-old level speech. If he was to see the written word, as in typing, keyboarding, or reading, writing, it might help increase his utterances. It might help increase also the quality of his response, and the amount, the length, the detail in his response. All of that is a lot easier to teach when you're using letters, a visual stimulus or prompt. So that's another direction that your therapist can go. But I really truly feel that there are other things that you should be looking at as well. For instance, and maybe you are, things like, does he dress himself, groom himself? Is he safe? Does he know what is safe and is not safe? Does he have any particular interests, both in the area of vocational or leisure? And both of those could be expanded on so that he has activities that he can do to stimulate his mind when he's alone, and also that he learns a type of job or vocation. As it could be something very simple, but it would be something that would give him gratification and help him feel he has succeeded. Those are very important areas. Feeding himself, meal preparation, shopping for food. I mean, there's a million things that would help make him independent, even if his vocal language remained at a 4-year level. Those other things could still continue to develop. And I always feel very strongly about helping give some level of independence or autonomy to our adults. And language, when there's such a huge difference in the chronological age and the mental age. So if the individual is 20 years old and his language level is at a 4-year level, I have a little bit of a peace of mind that at least he has an adequate level of language to express things like when he's in pain, or just when he needs something desperately. Those types of things, mans, are the most important. And those are, as long as he's able to express those, the next kind of boost to his desire to communicate becomes much more an internal motivation, which actually, honestly, I've found with a lot of our adults, they're very motivated to socialize. They're very motivated to interact, not necessarily answering questions, but just sharing some object or item or activity or something that they like to do or that they like to talk about. So I think it would be beneficial if you were able to go on Skills. I think it's called Skills Living.
That's exactly what it's called. Yes.
Yeah,
Skills Living.
Skills Living. And once you go on there, you'll answer a lot of questions, and it'll help you develop a really broad program for him across all the different areas, language certainly being one of them. And it might even give you a lot of feedback in regards to how to help expedite the language a little bit, but other areas, so social and vocational and adaptive and self-help. I mean, there's a million different areas to be looking at.
So if you want to know more about Skills Living, and that is for individuals that are 14 years and older, and it doesn't matter like what the skill level is, because they go back to, the earliest skill level, you can call that same number, 877-975-4559. I just want to reiterate too that, there's always some good news in these things, even when I'm sure it's disheartening to you that he can do it with the therapist, but he can't do it with his sister, and that weighs on us as parents. But I want to point out the good news. It means he can do it.
That's right.
He absolutely can do it. And that should give you some peace of mind. And now the people in your family have to learn how to set up the contingencies. It also means that he's got a lot on the ball. Because if you think about it, there's a lesson in Skills about it. Basically, it's not called that, but it's about reading your audience, reading the room, that you don't say the same thing to your 7-year-old friend that you say to your grandmother, right? Your grandmother has different interests. He's already doing that a little bit because he knows I can't get away with that with a therapist, but I can get away with that with my sister. And if you think about it, we all do that to some extent, right?
Of course.
I have a friend that, I give terrible directions. I'm the worst person in the world to give directions because I give directions the way my brain thinks. And I'm like, okay, you go down the street and there's that gas station that's all orange, and you turn left at the gas station that's all orange. And I have one friend who just stops me and goes, what on earth are you saying? What is the name of the street? And I go, I don't know. But I know that if I'm going to give her directions, I can't get away with what I normally do to people. And people generally want to kill me when I give them directions. It's just so annoying. She's like, how can anyone, you're like, turn left at the cactus, the house with the big cactus. What are you talking about? Right. But I know I can't get away with that with her. For her, I got to look it up and know what the streets are. Your son knows that he can get away with that with family members. So they just need to get better. Go to IBT so that they can get better, and have your therapist train them too. And he will be able to do it. And that's the good news. Okay, I gotta get to this dad. He says, hello, Dr. Doreen. I'm a father of a 7-year-old autistic boy who is coming from the Middle East as a new immigrant to the States. My son can speak a sentence of 3 or 4 words, but in Arabic. Is it possible to provide him with an RBT who can speak Arabic in the autism center that he will be going to? My son knows only Arabic, and I'm afraid he might lose what he gained of language. Please advise. I love this question.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would suggest, first of all, yes, it's possible there. I don't know if this parent is with CARD or with another company. I know at CARD, we have some Arabic speaking RBTs or behavior techs. You don't need an RBT, you just need a well-trained behavior technician. RBT is a certificate, you guys, and it's a higher level certificate that you get. It involves more training and a national exam and all that sort of stuff. A lot of our first year behavior techs don't have the RBT. They don't need to have it. Only 3 insurance companies in the country require it right now. So a lot of our people do have it, but you don't need that. Finding someone who speaks Arabic is going to be hard enough. So I recommend that you kind of look at anyone who's a behavior tech who speaks Arabic. So that is possible. But the more important thing is, are you planning to live here, or are you planning to go back to an Arabic country? Because it all has to do with what are your long-term plans. If you're staying in the United States, then I would not necessarily at this point continue teaching him in Arabic, because he needs to live and function here. So a lot of times it becomes important to switch over. It's not going to be very hard to switch over, but it will be one language at first. Teaching 2 languages at the same time will delay language, will delay the development of speech, no question about it. That's also in typically developing kids. When you're bilingual, you develop speech and language later. So I wouldn't do 2 languages. I would pick the location, the country, where are you going to be living, at least for the next, he's 7 years old right now. If you're going to be living here for at least the next year or 2, I would switch over to English. And then later on, you can always pair back with Arabic if you need to. But if you teach him in Arabic right now, he won't be able to function here. He won't be able to communicate with people.
Okay, so there's a lot of information for you there. Okay, we've got another question here. What do you think about an inclusion program? I've been thinking about starting a nonprofit business, start up a school where neurotypical kids can also attend with autistic kids with the help of professionals, teachers, and therapists.
No, I love it. And that's the ideal. And Shannon, as you know, it's the dream of every parent, and I love it. And, I'd be happy to advise and help however I can. There's a couple of obstacles that you'll encounter. First of all, I don't know what state you're in. The funding for schools is very strange in this country. There are certain states where you get really, really good funding, and then other states where you get barely any funding. So there are some states like California, for example, where it's almost impossible to open a charter school nowadays, and also public school funding is really limited. So you'd end up opening a private school. And if you open a private school, you have a lot more freedom, but you also have, a lot of parents won't be able to pay the private tuition, obviously. So that's kind of part of the problem. The idea of having having a lot of typically developing kids there is a beautiful idea. The problem is that the parents of a lot of typically developing kids don't want their kids in a school where there's, half of the other children have a disability. It's an unfortunate truth. We tried this numerous times, and it's very difficult to get parents to bring their typical kids to a program where their typical kids don't have the ability to model more advanced behavior, I guess. So that is an issue. You'll have a problem there. We even thought of having parents who have multiple kids, right? Bring their peers, their siblings to the school. And that is more possible, but then you have age differentiation. So the siblings are not necessarily the same age, or you could make it work with siblings if you were able to do that. So funding, and then after that, sort of, attracting the typical kids. And beyond that, yeah, I think you could do a tremendous job. You could have individualized education. It would be amazing.
Okay, and I just want to throw in there that there are two shining examples of places that are doing this. One is here in Los Angeles, and it's called Chime, and you can look into it. They only go up to 8th grade, and the waiting list to get into Chime it's crazy. It's a lottery, and it literally is like winning the lottery. I have watched probably 150 parents try to get their kids and not be able to get them in. But I know people who had kids in, and it's incredible, incredible school. The other one is up in the San Francisco area, and it's called Hope Tech. And they used to just be, it's funny, they started and they were like K through 4. And then they had kids that were going to graduate, and the parents were like, can you put a 5th grade on? And then now they go up through 12th grade. And I've threatened a time or 3 to move up there because I think what they do is so great. And now, because they have that, they've reached that point where the community knows, people with neurotypical kids fight to get their kids in there. They've had Rhodes Scholars come out of that school. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. And somebody wrote in and said, obviously we need to spread awareness on this issue. And it's absolutely true. Yes. A lot of people are like, why would I want my child to go to a school where there's kids who, feel like ignorant? It's ignorant. We do need to spread awareness. But these people at these schools, man, they fight for their kids to be in there. And part of the reason why they fight to get their kids in there in the beginning is that they're smaller class size, which we should all be fighting for, no matter where our kids are on whatever spectrum there is.
And if I'm not wrong, Chime at least was a charter school.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know about Hope Tech, but it's pretty impossible right now to open a charter school in California anymore. Yeah. In the old days, it was a different game. I wish I had done it like 20 years ago, but it's pretty frozen in time.
Yeah, it's a mess right now in California. That is for sure. Hopefully things will change in the future. Okay, so I want to say that the mom who wrote in about the 20-year-old boy said, thank you very much for answering the question. Very helpful. And there's like 7 exclamation points. So we love that. I also got to give a shout out here to Jacinda, who wrote in and said, thank you so much. I changed my ABA team because you guys educated me to observe if the team is effective. Now I have a new team and my boys have improved tremendously. Thank you so much. And we are loving you. Somebody wrote in and said, I believe diet is so important. Super fresh fruits and vegetables, no fluoride, no GMOs, no corn syrup. If you only stock good food, eventually they will get hungry enough to eat it. And they sent some lovely emojis, and I love that. Yes, we were talking about this yesterday, that, we don't know a whole lot of things, but we do know that if there's pesticides in your child's diet, you are more likely to see behaviors of inattention and ADHD-like behaviors. So getting good food into your child, I think, should be on everybody's agenda. And I know, Dr. Granpeche, you're pretty adamant about that diet does.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm a big proponent of that. And I'm really, really concerned with the food quality in the US. In fact, just this morning, Shannon, I was talking to a friend of mine, and we're going to be growing all kinds of fruits and vegetables in my backyard, because honestly, it's just impossible nowadays to get anything that's real anymore. So,
well, we have to have a conversation, because earlier this summer, I think I shared on the show that I had dug up part of my yard and planted a garden, and I had it is a jungle in my front yard. And but now somebody has told me that I need to test the soil to make sure that it was okay to grow vegetables in it before. And I could feed the neighborhood right now with, I have a squash that, I'm not kidding you, is this big in my yard right now. I have things hanging off the fence. It was supposed to be sort of a shield from the community because our yard is right there and we're right there, and for our dog. And instead the neighborhood comes and stands at our fence and is like, what's that? Is this kind of squash?
That's so cool.
And I'm like, get a mask on and I'll talk to you. That's how that's going. Yeah, it's craziness. So, and now I'm trying to find somebody who will test the soil for me. So your person probably knows this. So we'll have to have a conversation. But I can't even believe how much grew. It's insane. Like the things I have in my front yard right now. Okay, so somebody wrote in, and I try to be careful about not using people's names, but they say that they're from Southeast Portland. They say, I'm a PSW. I don't know what a PSW is. They say, I'm a PSW for a 16-year-old. His parents think I'd be a better teacher than school. They are pulling him out this fall. Any advice on teaching him to read? Should I teach him the alphabet or match words to preferred items? ... Thank you.
I don't know what PSW is, but SW could be social worker.
Okay.
So maybe they can tell us. But yeah, I would recommend, again, skills, because we have a whole academic curriculum in skills, and that is the place to start. And I love the way that we do it in skills, because it's, yeah.
They say personal support worker. They're also
okay.
a behavior therapist. And apparently this individual sent you a gut health book for Christmas, and they want to know if you got it.
I don't know if I did. Maybe I did in the office. I would, well, first of all, let me thank you ahead of time in case I did, because Christmas, and as you know, Shannon, January was a very kind of chaotic. There was a lot going on because I was retiring, and from being the CEO of CARD. So it is very possible that you did, and I will thank you. If I didn't thank you in person, I want to thank you now. And I think I actually know who this is now that you mention it. Yes, of course. This is one of our behavior techs, I believe. And so hi, and yes, of course. And you should be.
I was trying not to be specific because, you know,
you should look on. You should definitely look at skills, because there's a really cool academic portion. We usually, when we do ABA with our kids, we don't give access to the academic portion because we're being paid by health insurance, and health insurance doesn't allow us to do academic work. So you should go on skills and take a look at the academic curriculum, and you'll know skills pretty well. So you'll love it. It's an awesome way to teach all the different aspects of reading and writing and all of that.
Okay. And so follow along with skills to do that. Okay. I'm going to switch back over to questions. What can be done for a student who does not talk a lot in session? He can often sit with a blank look on his face, even when presented with questions he knows the answer to. When we allow him to escape the behavior, it did not get more frequent. When we gave it attention, it also did not change the rates. The only difference we see is over time. After several months with the same behavior tech, he speaks more. Is there any way to increase his speaking behavior without waiting it out?
Yeah, so what he's doing is not necessarily to get attention or anything like that. He's just simply delaying the demand. It's similar to a child where you just a typically developing kid that you say, hey, it's time to go take a bath, and they negotiate, or they run off, or whatever it is, or they act silly, and the whole thing delays the bath because maybe they don't want to take a bath. They'd rather do what they were doing. So you need to, your therapist, or you need to reinforce, you need to shape the latency, how fast he responds. That's called latency. So it's like from the time you give the instruction to the time he responds, there's a base, you measure that time. And let's say right now he's taken a long time because he has this blank look on his face and he takes a really long time. Whatever that is, you basically will now set a timer, and all you have to do is reward all attempts where he responds faster than that baseline. So let's say the current baseline is like he takes 30 seconds, okay? Anytime in the going forward from that, you're practicing that he responds with less than 30 seconds within that period of time, you reward it. If he responds 30 seconds or longer, you don't reward it. And that's really as simple as it gets. And then you get to whatever the new baseline is. Like over time, he will start responding at 28 seconds just because you're rewarding that. And then that becomes your new baseline. And from there on now, every time he responds to anything faster than 28 seconds, you'll now reward that and not reward 28 seconds. So this is this gradual shaping where you're reducing the latency, right? In the meantime, you just need to be careful that all of your instructions or demands or questions are easy. Because you don't want to have, it would be confounding, it would be a conflict if you're trying to speed up his response, but you're giving him difficult things. So it's got to be easy things where he actually, we're not dealing with the difficulty factor, we're just dealing with the speed of response.
Okay. Yeah. The person who wrote in about the no GMOs, no corn syrup, and good food said, now we just need to spread awareness, no pharmaceutical cover-up drugs. I just want to make sure, we had Lisa Ackerman on the show yesterday, and she gave information about, normally they do their conference in the fall and it's 3 days and people go to it. That's not going to happen this fall. So instead they're doing an online virtual conference. It's every day in the month of October from the 1st to the 31st with speakers every day. You can start and stop the speakers, their videos. And then there are specific times when you can go to a specific Facebook chat to talk with the speaker and have your questions answered and meet with other caregivers and other siblings and other individuals on the spectrum. It's 31 days. A lot of it is about biomedical and environmental and diet, but it isn't by any means all of it. There's some there's an ABA track, there's a biomedical track, there's a health track, there's all kinds of things. And today only, there's a pre-registration for the entire month of seminars and groups. It's a crazy low number. Are you ready for this? It's $25 for the entire month. But isn't that crazy? Like I said, that's insane. But it's only today. If you go to do it tomorrow, it'll be $49, which is also insane. But I would rather see you do it today, sign up for it today. There is a place when you sign up that if you would like to, if you have the funds, you can scholarship somebody else, that you can donate another $25 or more for somebody else to go. And I was very grateful to be able to do that. But if you are somebody who cannot afford the $25, because there have been times in my autism journey where I could not have gone for the price of $25. No shame, no harm, no foul. Apply for a scholarship because people like me gave money so that more of you could go to it. 31 days. I said to her, like, that's my dream, Dr. Grandpichet, to do something. I mean, we do a version of that.
It sounds so awesome. I just wrote it down because I don't know if I can, because, I have so much going on, but it just sounds like such a great refresher. And I love listening to biomedical folks. So,
well, the great thing is that you can go in on any day. So let's say you're busy from the 1st to the 4th, and on the 15th, you go in and you go, oh, I want to see the talk that Dr. Kriegsman gave.
Yeah.
And then you can fast forward, stop, pause, go put your child to bed, watch 5 minutes, your child gets back up, pause it again. But then you can find out which day and I'm saying Dr. Kriegsman, I'm making that up, but if he's one of the people, you can see which date he's doing the live Q&A when you can ask questions. So
awesome.
Honestly, I think that, there's something that's to be said about getting to go to a conference.
Yep.
But this is so much easier for those of you who are in the intensive part of intervention. They are also a big part of the regular TACA conference is their exhibit hall with all the people. They're still doing the exhibit hall online so that you can go through and see people and click a thing and say, I'd like to talk to somebody from this organization, which I've never been able to do the exhibit hall for Autism Live, but I can do it that way. I absolutely can do this. I'm excited about it.
So do people just go on the TACA website to register if they want to do that today?
if you go to tacanow.org and click where at the top it says a bunch of things, click on conferences, and there's a place where it says register. I already did it this morning because I didn't want to forget. But you can register for it. I guarantee you there's something for everybody. And let's face it, if you bought a book about autism, you would have dropped $25. So, but if
Yeah,
you can't afford it, send, tell them I'm looking for a scholarship. They know that there are going to be some of you who need them. And if you can afford it, give a scholarship. Okay, so where was I? There was another thing that I was going to address. Oh, for our person who wrote in and sent you the book, apparently the book is called Gut and Psychology Syndrome for ADHD and Autism. He said, you are welcome. I hope you locate it because that's a book I'd like to read. And he said to you, thank you for everything that you do. And he said, thanks, girl.
Thank you.
So there you go. There was no finger click. I put that in. Okay. Now, somebody else wrote in and said some of the autism community believe in pharmaceuticals, and but not all. And I do want to make that point that nobody here is saying that there are some medications that are great and necessary and wonderful. It's just a matter of when do you use medication, when is it diet, when is it behavioral. Dr. Grampiche, would you like to?
I agree with that, Shannon. I fully agree with that. I mean, there are certain things that you can only really deal with pharmaceutical. The thing about pharmaceutical medications or drugs is basically that they are not dealing necessarily with the symptoms. They're not dealing with what caused the problem. But and which is why it's important to be looking at nutrition or homeopathic, naturopathic things, because they do deal with kind of the cause, right? What caused it? But when you have symptoms that are, let's say, painful or, causing other types of irritations, then it helps to actually have medication that takes the pain away, or medication that eases the anxiety, let's say. So I kind of support both. But I agree with you. A lot of times we reduce the symptoms like pain and then don't deal with the cause. And that's not probably good either. Like, it's really important to figure out if, let's say, someone has gastrointestinal pain and you go to see a Western medicine GI doctor, gastroenterologist, they will basically give you medications that are going to reduce acid or increase bowel movement, or just reduce pain and reduce inflammation that way. But it isn't necessarily dealing with or figuring out what's causing the inflammation to begin with. And I'm a big supporter of looking at things from a causative way, and just like, what is causing this symptom? Can I fix it at the very beginning so it never happens?
Okay. If you saw me make a face and go, it was because Traven just alerted me to the fact that there was a technical difficulty and he hadn't been sending the comments from Facebook, and so many things just came in that my head spun. We've only got 5 minutes. But a lot of what I love is that you started talking to each other on Facebook. I absolutely love it when you guys do that. Okay, what are the studies saying about the success of telehealth? It's been super successful at home, but don't know how to proceed for the fall. 7-year-old son and ABA and speech and OT, all online, including his summer school and camp. We've learned so much about his therapy and his needs, and we are seeing such gains, but worried he will say enough soon. And I did, for that parent, I want you to know that I did get your other message that's a legal question for Bonnie that came in last night, and I'm putting that in for Bonnie. But we have some results from the telehealth, Dr. Grampiche, but I don't think quite yet all of it. But preliminarily, much better than we thought, isn't it? Or am I mistaken?
Yeah. The Shannon, Nikki, my daughter, also did a complete review of the literature, and she's submitted it for publication right now. So she reviewed every bit of research that exists on telehealth right now, but for autism. And basically, I think what it supports is a number of different things. One is that indirect care. So things like training the parent or providing programming information, what we call supervision. All of those things are very, very successful through telehealth. When it comes to actual direct therapy, there's very little research on it, but what we've seen so far is that depending on the functioning level of the child and depending on the reinforcers of the child, telehealth can be successful. So if it's a child who has the ability to pay attention, let's say, or we can teach them to pay attention to a screen for an extended period of time, that means they can receive reinforcers on the screen that are adequate, that are interesting enough. Like, there's just so much I can do on a screen to keep you interested. But if that's enough, and if the child is able to sit quietly and pay attention and receive instruction and carry out instruction, then it works. And the other factor is that if the child can have someone who's a facilitator, so a parent or someone who can help the child by giving them reinforcer or by pointing to the screen, getting their attention on the screen, then telehealth works again. For kids who are starting out and or are a little bit more severely impacted by autism, telehealth therapy can be very hard. But if it's working for your child, that's wonderful. And I suggest that you try to continue some of it. And you can even do a combined sort of some face-to-face and some telehealth.
Okay, we're almost out of time here. I want to get to this comment. Somebody wrote in and said card with an exclamation point and put a little emoji with a halo. I saw my son benefit, then regress with a company that had trouble keeping ABA therapists 10 years ago with a junior supervisor who was unkind and not client-centered with my son and me as a mother. I lost faith in ABA until I subbed in an ABA preschool last year. The company individual leadership style of ABA is, delivery of ABA is crucial, all in capital letters. I am now an ABA therapist in that classroom, and thank you, and I'm glad that you're loving card. And then I'm going to squeeze this in. Is it normal for a 6-year-old to only want to eat French fries? He will not eat home-cooked food at home. Dr. Granpeesheh, I know you probably have to go, but I'm going to stay on and just talk about specific carbohydrate and how our kids sometimes will orient to, although if you want to stay and talk about food selectivity, that's up to you. But I know you probably
I appreciate that, Shannon. Yeah, I have a call exactly at 11, but yeah, I'm sure you'll handle it. And I agree. It's like the SCD diet is great. And also food selectivity is something very common. And I do recommend that you change it because it can get worse.
There we go. Thank you so much for being here. Stay with us, you guys, but we're going to say goodbye to Dr. Granpeesheh.
Bye, everyone.
We just adore you. And it was so great to have you here today.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. I just want to say that I think it's a very common thing that our kids get into one specific food and a type of food and even having it from a specific place. We have a family that we talked to that their child can only have Burger King French fries, that he can taste the difference between Burger King and McDonald's and is not interested in having the McDonald's French fries. And so there's a couple of different things that I want to say to us all as caregivers of individuals who are on the autism spectrum. We want to make sure that our kids are, first of all, safe and happy and alive, right? And sometimes we will opt for the short term because it's the thing that works. So I just want us all to give ourselves a hug for that and know that that's normal. And that's part of how we get to the point where they're like, no, I'm going to refuse everything else except French fries from this particular place. Or you could even make French fries at home and they're like, I'm not having those, right? Is because we didn't want them to starve, right? And so we fed them the thing that made them happy. It doesn't make us bad people. But at a certain point, it becomes a problem. And now we got to look at it and figure out something to do. A lot of times we'll notice that kids are eating all the same thing and it's all the same color. And it tends to be in the white, yellow category because those are carbs. For the kids that only will eat nachos or potato chips or potatoes or French fries, There was a period of time in which that's all my son would eat is chicken nuggets and French fries. That was it, right? And I was gleefully feeding them to him because at least he was eating, right? Because if I didn't give him that, he refused it. And no one here ever would advocate starving a child. This is not what this is about. But if you're working with a good ABA provider, you can start to turn this around. There are statistics about the fact that you have to present a food some crazy amount of times, like 27 times, before a child will even try it. And a lot of times we're like, well, I'm not going to make green beans 27 times and throw them in the trash 27 times. But you don't have to put a whole cup of green beans on the plate. You just have to put like 2. And, maybe it's that you get 2 green beans and you cook, you don't overcook them. Never overcook vegetables for young kids because it creates an acid that responds with their taste buds, right? So just barely cooked. And, you put them on the plate and you don't say anything. You don't force them to eat them. You don't force them to try it. You just put them there and do it 27 times. And supposedly a magical thing happens. I don't know. The thing that I know that works for sure is that you take the thing that they love and you put just a little bit of something else with it. So for French fries, if he loves the French fries from McDonald's, even if it's like, I don't know whether he has ketchup on them or not, but even to get something else, like French fries from McDonald's are hard to add things to, but you can add stick them in a tomato sauce or something. And he may be like, no, I'm not having that. But like the tiniest little speck so that you're introducing a new taste and maybe he'll refuse. You want to make sure that he's still thriving and that he's still getting food. But what we see is that I've seen people take chocolate and spinach and the kid loves chocolate. And so they'll make chocolate pudding and they put like the teeniest speck of spinach in it, right? And it has to be that the kid doesn't notice. And the kid eats the chocolate pudding and you're like, okay, there was a speck of spinach in there. Then they put in a speck and a half of spinach until eventually, it's half spinach and the kids eat it. And then when they put spinach differently, the kids will eat it because their taste buds have gotten used to it. Jerry Seinfeld's wife wrote a whole cookbook about how to sneak vegetables into food. Super hard if they're only going to be eating a French fry from another place, which is why I want to talk to you about the specific carbohydrate. Under the direction of a doctor, there is a diet that's called the specific carbohydrate diet, which is when you try to break their addiction to these foods. It's a rough going. There is a book, I think it's called I'm going to get it wrong. It's something about how to bust. I'll find it. I apologize. I cannot remember it. But if you Google specific carbohydrate diet, you'll probably find it. It's got the word gut in it. But it's a rough going and I wouldn't do it without a doctor, being under a doctor's care, but it means kind of cold turkey, taking it all away. But it's not just the French fries. It's all potatoes. It's pretty much all fruit. For a period of time. You got to watch your kid very closely with the doctor because at a certain point, you will see a change in behavior and your child will go into ketosis. We never want a child to stay in ketosis. I think it took 17 days with my child and it was an uncomfortable 17 days. Can I just say, like, I don't even mean to laugh because I want to cry. It was a hard day because it got him free of yeast. It was rough. And there were a couple of days where I wasn't sure if he was going to eat, but as somebody said, if you stock your house with only healthy things, most kids, I don't want to say all kids, will eventually get hungry and eat things that you never knew that they would eat. They will. But for some kids who've got bigger issues, we just want to make sure that no child ever starves. Okay. I just want to say that there are tons more questions on here, but look up specific carbohydrate. And I apologize to all of you. Oh my gosh, the number of questions we didn't get to. If you want to, you can write to me, s.penrod@autism-live, and I will try to go in later and give some answers and get some answers for some of these questions on Facebook. I've been running to keep up and I've not been keeping up lately because there have been so many questions. So, but I do see somebody said, I worked in an inclusion program and it is a beautiful thing. It absolutely is. So, somebody wrote in and said, where do we find the info on the specific carbohydrate? Just Google specific carbohydrate diet and see what you can find out about that. But I will try to write in answers to some of the things that you guys are writing in. Hey, we're back tomorrow with Evelyn Gould. She's going to be with us, and she's like a regular from the show from way back when we started. She was one of the BCBAs who helped us get started with the show and helped me with some of the jargon of the days that I make the most fun of. She is now Dr. Evelyn Gould. She left to become a doctor, and she's an expert in the field of acceptance commitment therapy. And it's the cutting edge for parents and for individuals who are on the autism spectrum, for us to deal with the feelings that we have about whatever, so that we can get back to the work at hand. So it's not a thing to, put a panacea on the feelings. It's not a way to tell you to suck it up. It's a way to have us have a way to embrace the feelings, but keep moving. So, and be in less pain. So she's going to be with us tomorrow. You are not going to want to miss that. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.
The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and I am underslept like a lot of people in Southern California. We were up late last night anyway, but then at 4:30 this morning, we had an earthquake and we've had a couple of aftershocks. So I'm just going to put it out there that it's entirely possible that during this live show, we will have an aftershock. If we do, we will demonstrate and model good behavior. We will, Traven and I will let the cameras roll. But I will get underneath my desk because that's what you do. It is a reminder to me that there are usually times during the year where we do emergency drills here on the show, and we encourage you at home to do emergency drills. It's just a reminder that it's time to do that kind of a thing with your kiddos, and you do want to do that with all of our kiddos, and you want to do it at different times of the day and different times of the night, so that in an emergency, a lot of times our brain is doing all these other things, but our body has a memory of what it was we rehearsed, right? It's just like rehearsing a play. It's why we do fire drills at school. Everybody hates them. It's why they do the thing on the plane where they, give you and we all make fun of it, right? But then if you need it in an emergency, your body already has a muscle memory of, oh yeah, this, right? Whatever. So just want to put it out there to you guys that over the next couple of days, over the weekend, maybe do a fire drill with your kiddos, and, maybe today have a discussion with them about sometime in the next couple of days, we're going to do a fire drill and or an earthquake drill or a whatever drill, whatever is pertinent. And you need to do all of them eventually, right? And rehearse what it is that you'll do. But the main thing is to do it at different times of the day so that they're in different rooms. Because if every time you do it, your child is in your living room, then they learn what to do if they're in the living room, right? And sometimes they're in their bedroom. And sometimes they're upstairs and sometimes they're downstairs. Sometimes they're in the bathroom, right? So pick random times to do the different things that, when you're doing the rehearsal, make it fun and not anxiety provoking, right? So that your kiddos know what to do and where to go and how to do that. All right, but if something happens, if we begin to shake, my table is shaky, so it looks like we're constantly having an earthquake, but if it starts to shake, I will get under the table. Self-preservation. I also want to say that I have a neighbor who's been doing construction for, I don't know, since before the 4th of July, so the whole month of July. And we had an agreement that he would not do construction from 10 to 11 while I was doing live shows. He apparently has not looked at his watch. So if you hear all kinds of things, the house is not being torn down. It's just that my next door neighbor is, I don't know what he's building, but he's building something. So there we have it. That's all the news that's fit. Okay, so good morning and welcome to Israel and to Nita. Hello, 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 hello. We got a big show for you today. And if you couldn't tell, I'm excited about our guest today because she was one of the founding members of when we started Autism Live 9 years ago. We literally are like, I believe this is like, this week is our 9-year anniversary of doing a show about autism in this format. It's just, I can't even believe. Next year, we got to do something big when we hit the 10-year mark. So Dr. Evelyn Gould is going to be joining us in a little while, and she's amazing. She was a regular for, I think over a year on the show, and then she left to go become Dr. Evelyn Gould, and now she's going to be here with us for the first time in a long time, sharing her expertise, especially in the field of ACT, acceptance commitment therapy. It's the really hot cutting edge thing that folks are talking about and doing with parents, caregivers of individuals who are on the autism spectrum, and now with individuals who are on the autism spectrum, to manage our anxiety and stress so that we can lead better, more productive lives and help the individuals that we care about and have them help themselves to be able to do more. That's really what it's all about. I myself am I'm a recipient of being able to do this therapy, and look, it helped me so much, but I almost want to say more importantly, it helped my child. It helped me to parent my child in a way that wasn't suffocating some of the time. Let's not say that I'm not suffocating all the time. I have been accused of being Beverly Goldberg on more than one occasion, and I do not take offense at that. And if you don't know who Beverly Goldberg is, watch at least one episode of the Goldbergs and you will see, yeah. And my son howls when he watches the show and he's like, oh yeah, Mom, that's not like you at all. It's terrifying and hilarious at the same time. Okay, we got a lot to do though before Dr. Gould gets here. So let me just say this show is meant to be interactive. We're gonna be here for the next hour. Israel and Nita have already written in. I want to encourage you to participate in whatever way is comfortable for you. We got a lot of different ways. You can be writing in on the live feature at www.autism-live.com. You can write in on Facebook. Look for us on Facebook, Autism Live. You can go to YouTube, and we're Autism Live on YouTube. We're live right there right now. We're on Twitter at Autism Live Show. Same thing for Periscope. Now, later on, the show will podcast to a lot of different places. It's a free download on iTunes. It is available to you on Spotify, Deezer, and iHeartRadio. And we've got a few more ways that are coming in the coming months. If there is a way that you like to watch podcasts, or you're aware of a streaming service that we're not on, please, and you like to watch, get your information in that way, please write to me and let me know. We're happy to be. For us, we really want to be places where people can access it at no additional cost to them. So there you go. But we're willing to be on a streaming service that you already have that does have a cost, as long as they don't charge you extra for Autism Live. That's our litmus test. Okay, so having said all of those things, I do want to remind you that while we have lots of wonderful experts on the show, and a great one today, I'm not an expert in the field of autism. Please don't confuse me or mistake me for being an expert in the field of autism. I have been hosting shows about autism now in this interview format for 13 years, because I did a radio show before this. And I've learned a lot. So I consider myself having a definitely informed opinion, but not an expert in autism, not even an expert in my kiddo. But that is how I came into this community, was that my son was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2.5. He's now 17 and he's so spectacular. Hey, we're saying hi to, is it Mahmoud from Egypt? And if you're watching us right now, you're with us. We only invite our guests to be on Zoom with us. And if you want to be a guest on Autism Live, all you have to do is write to me and pitch me an idea. Say, I want to come on and talk about X, Y, or Z. Give me 3 to 5 talking points and let's figure it out. My email is s.penrod@autism-live.com. Yeah, so we are utilizing Zoom to broadcast, as Ready, Set, Autism Family has said, but you can't jump into the Zoom. You can watch us as we stream the Zoom. That's what we're doing. As Chuck Saffler said to me recently, he's like, you're bending Zoom to your will. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're bending Zoom to our will, making it possible for us to bring you a show with very low tech. So thrilled that you're here. Hi, Jacinda. And again, hi to Ready, Set, Autism Family. Hi, Kristen. I'm trying to figure, hi, Christina. So thrilled to have you all here. So we like to start Thursday with something we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is when we take one word, one phrase, one acronym. We try to figure out what in the hey nanny are the experts talking about? Why do I need to know this term? Why are you bothering me with this? Why don't you just put this in plain, simple terms that everybody can understand? Why do you have to use these words, right? But we've learned that over the years, if you make friends with these terms, it just like makes it easier. It's like shorthand. And when you start to use and understand these terms, I think people, they see that you are trying to learn the thing. And it's sort of, I hate this, but it's like being in the club. And when you go in like to an IEP meeting and you don't know the terms and you're constantly have to stop them and saying, what do you mean by this? Or worse, you just nod your head and you don't even know what you're agreeing to, right? That's a horrible place to be in. The alternative is that you come in and you know at least some of the jargon terms and you say, well, what was the antecedent? And they go, oh, okay, this person, they're, I can't pull the wool over their eyes, right? And suddenly you're in the club and starting to understand what people are saying. My whole thing as a parent was I wanted my child to make the most progress, and that meant saving time. And when you know what the jargon is, it saves you time. And I think it gives you some clouts. So clout. There's only one clout, not plural. Okay, so today's jargon term, we mentioned this on Monday when we did the ABCs of behavior, the 3-term contingency. We brought up antecedent. And I want to say, when I pitched this idea, when we were starting the show, and I said, I want to do jargon of the day, and they were like, what do you mean? And this was the jargon term I picked to demonstrate, because the first time somebody said antecedent to me, I was like, what? What are you talking about? And they were like, well, there's always an antecedent. And I was like, I've never seen an antecedent in my life, have no idea what you're talking about, right? But this is where it all began for me. So here we go. It's like old home week. We're here with antecedent and we have Dr. Evelyn Gould. So what is an antecedent? I don't know. I was picturing like some, like an anteater. I don't know why. I get these crazy ideas in my head of what something is. I try to picture it. Antecedent. It's like a 4-legged animal with a long snout. No, that's not what an antecedent is. Let's take a look at what our actual definition of an antecedent is. Let's see if we can make fun of it. Antecedent, anything that occurs or is present immediately before the behavior of interest. All right, there's not a lot to be made fun of here, but I still don't get it, right? If I'm early in the autism journey, I'm like, what? Anything that occurs or present immediately before the behavior of interest. What's the behavior of interest? I don't get it, right? So let's pare it down to our working definition so we really can get a handle on this and talk about why you need to know this. Antecedent, it's like asking the question, what happened before? So, okay, here we go. The school sends home a note and says that your kid got into trouble at school and that he kicked another kid, right? And you're like, well, okay. First question you want to ask is, well, what happened right before? What happened right before he kicked the kid? He didn't kick the kid in a vacuum, right? Something happened and then he kicked the kid. And you really can't deal with why he kicked the kid until you know what happened right before. Did the kid kick him and it was a response to the kick? Did the kid spit on him and that was the response to the kick? Did somebody dare him to kick the kid? Like, I don't know. But how we go about dealing with and preventing it from happening again starts with knowing what happened before. And you know that when we talked about the 3-term contingency on Monday, we talked about the ABCs of behavior. A is antecedent, B is behavior, C is consequence. So something happens, the antecedent, then the behavior occurs, and then there's a consequence. And this is true, good or bad, in all things that we do. Every day, you get up and you go over and you turn on a light switch. There's a 3-term contingency there. What happened before? Either you were coming into the room or the light was light out and then it was getting dark and you couldn't see, or somebody said, I want to show you this, but you couldn't see it, right? There was an antecedent, something happened, and your behavior was that you went and you flicked on the light switch. And the consequence was that light flooded in the room and you could see. How many times a day do you turn on a light switch? You are engaging in a 3-term contingency. And when you or your child smoke a cigarette, there is a 3-term contingency. Something happens, you smoke the cigarette, and there's a consequence. When a child on the autism spectrum bites someone, there is an antecedent. There is the behavior, the biting, and there is a consequence. And as I said to you on Monday, we are so focused on the behavior, right? Because the behavior is what gets us all fatutzed. We don't really have a lot of control over behavior, because what are you going to do? Tape somebody to the floor and go, don't do that, right? We can say to them, don't do that. We can urge them not to do it, but it's really dicey. But where we do have control is over the antecedent and sometimes over consequences. And sometimes one is stronger than the other. Like you look at the behavior and you look at why the behavior is happening, and you can't unless you know what the antecedent and the consequence were, right? But you look at the behavior and you go, okay, what could we do with this so that this doesn't have to happen? Like the child who has the meltdown, and we look at it and we go, why is that meltdown happening? And it's because the child, was so busy playing when it was lunchtime that they didn't eat. And now it's 2:00 and we discovered that, just like us, if they wait too long to eat, they're going to get crabby. So the antecedent modification that we would put in is making sure that they eat their regular meals and that we reward them from leaving a preferred task, like playing with their Legos. That's so much fun, and say, we're going to eat and then we're going to come back to playing with the Legos, right? So that we don't get to the point where the child is having a meltdown because their blood sugar is low. So a lot of times we can take care of the antecedent modification. I talked on Monday about how I used to bring a little bag of little fidget toys for my son, that if we were anywhere, it was in the car. So if we then went to a restaurant, the fidget toys would come out and be on the table. So he was occupied. He didn't have an opportunity to get bored, because when my child got bored, he found something to do. Right? And it might be taking apart the restaurant table, so we weren't waiting for that. If we were in the doctor's office, the baggie of toys came out. If we were, at somebody's house and their child wasn't sharing their toy, the bag of fidget toys came out and he had toys to play with. That's an antecedent modification. I didn't let him get bored so that then we would get behavior that then had to have a consequence, right? Okay, so antecedent is the beginning of everything. What happened before? Moving on, because we're already running late. We always have a question for you, the question of the day. We love it when you write in your answer to the question on Facebook or YouTube. And you can also email it to me. But how do you set yourself up for success? Because that's part of what I think of antecedent modification, setting our kids up for success. How do you set yourself up for success? I will tell you, one of my favorite things to fail to do that I know sets me up for success is getting a good night's sleep. And I shared with you that that did not happen last night. And even before the earthquake, we were at the vets until we didn't get home until 1 o'clock in the morning. So yeah, I'm not set up for success for today. And you know what? It's probably going to be okay for today, but if I do that over and over and over again, you will see me, you know? And later on today, you know, hopefully we're going to I'm so excited about the show. We're going to get through the show, but you know, later on today, I'm going to be suffering. And my performance as a parent and as a person on this planet will be less because I didn't set myself up for success last night. Sometimes you can't, right? And sometimes you have to mediate and go, okay, I wasn't able to get the sleep that I wanted. So I made sure that I, you know, took it slow this morning, was kind to myself, ate a good breakfast, right? To sort of mediate it. But how do you set yourself up for success? Write in and tell us, because sometimes it doesn't occur to us, you know, what we could do differently. And then we see somebody else go, oh, well, you know what I do? I just do this. And you go, oh, for corn's sake, Ethel, I didn't think of that. One of my favorite expressions from I Love Lucy. Okay, so we always have a topic this week, and rounding out our topic for this week, making it fun. Oh my goodness. You know, we talk a lot about doing ABA therapy and how important it is and how important to do so many hours of it. But if you are not focused on this aspect of everything, making everything in your child's environment as fun as possible, they're not going to want to do the hard things. And learning how to talk when it's not coming naturally to you, I'm told that it's one of the hardest things that there is. Learning how to overcome sensory stuff. Boy, I live in that neighborhood. I have sensory issues and I got to be motivated and it's got to be fun. You know, right now we're working hard to get me out of the house occasionally to go do things because I do run a little agoraphobic, you know what I mean? And I've been home really, I don't want to be safe. I'm not crazy and going out and doing things that don't need to be done, but we're trying to get me out of the house a little bit so that when this is all over, I don't become a hermit because I'm willing to. But it's got to be fun. Like it can't all be drudgery. Last night we had to go to the vet and that was not fun. And my husband was like, all right, we got to find something fun to do next time to get you out of the house. And it's the same way for our kiddos. We have got to, and it for all of us, if you are doing an ABA intervention and it's all work and there is no fun, you're not going to be able to sustain it. It's going to be, you're going to get bitter and resentful, and you need to enjoy today. With everything that you have going on, you need to enjoy today. And our brains are these positive assumptive computers. So you just need to ask the question of yourself right now, how can I make today fun? Just ask it, wait for the answer that pops up. Something will pop up. And if it's a negative that goes, well, you can't, shove that to the side. And we're gonna bring Evelyn Gould in here and she's gonna tell you about how to shove something to the side. But you need to find the way to enjoy something today, even if it's for 2 minutes. And if it can be something that isn't bad for you, so much the better, right? Because I think too often, you know, I'm guilty of finding something that I shouldn't eat and having that be my fun for the day. That's not really fun for the day. Yeah. So find something that enriches your life that's fun for the day. Because what are we doing if we're not doing that? And I used to have a thing that sat on my computer that said, Jem will never be this age again. And at 17, you know, I look back at how much I worried through all of the years. And, you know, I wish there had been somebody in this format to say to me, it's going to be okay. Find some time to have fun today. It's going to be okay. And having the fun might be the most important thing you do today. All right. I say that with love because I need people to say that to me. Okay. I hope that Evelyn is with us. I'm saying hello to Amanda. And I'm saying hello to Dr. Surabhi Srinivasa. such a beautiful name. Sorry for slaughtering it, but saying hello back to you. So thrilled that you are here. I see that we do have Evelyn with us, Dr. Evelyn Gould, excuse me. And I go ahead, Evelyn, if you can hear me. There she is.
Hi.
Oh my gosh, it's just such a joy to have you here with us.
Lovely to be invited, Shannon. It's been a while.
It has been a lot. I've been saying all week long that you were a part of this from the very beginning. That, you know, 9 years ago today, I pretty much can know exactly where we were because we were gearing up to do the first ever show about autism that we were doing. And you were front and center and one of a core group of 3 BCBAs that helped to shape like our jargon of the day and all of that. I'm going to get emotional. So it's so thrilling to have you back at the scene of the crime. Did you have any idea that we would still be doing? I didn't think we'd be doing this 9 years later.
No, I could not have predicted at all what any of us would be doing or where we'd be now. It's crazy to me. I mean, but in a way, I'm not surprised. Like, you know, thinking about you, Shannon, and your passion and your skills and the impact that you have through this program and in general, I'm kind of not surprised.
Well, I thank you. That's so sweet of you. But I have to say that I was so up a tree in those early days. And if it hadn't been, I mean, largely you, and there were a couple of other people who really helped me and educated me. Somebody said to me last night, you know, how did you learn what you know? And I, you know, and I learned a lot through my son having therapy, but in that first 6 months before we went on the air, in the first 6 months that we were on the air, I learned so much from you and a couple of other people that it is, I threatened for years to write a book about what you guys gave me in that time period. So if I haven't said so before, thank you so much. And this show would not have existed without you. And your imprint is still felt on it. So thank you so very much. But you've been off and doing amazing things. And the last time that you were on the show, you were not yet Dr. Evelyn Gould, and you are Dr. Evelyn Gould now, and we couldn't be prouder of you about that. And you are a recognized expert in the field of autism, and in particular, the field of acceptance, commitment, therapy, or treatment. Which one is it? Is it therapy or treatment?
Most often you'll see acceptance and commitment therapy, but I also see people calling it acceptance and commitment training, acceptance and commitment coaching. So there are different ways of, different people use different names for different purposes. As we know, words function in different ways in different contexts. So I think either is fine. And most often you'll hear people just say an ACT.
Yeah. You know, that gets a little confusing for us because, as you know, there's a charity act that's Autism Today. Yeah. So that's the only reason why I try to specify. But talk to us a little bit about ACT, and maybe even give us a little bit of information about how you got so excited about this particular way of looking at things.
Sure. So acceptance and commitment therapy is really an approach to how to show up and do things that matter to you, even when life is really hard. So when you essentially like finding direction in adversity, that's kind of how I would think about it. It's like, how do you connect to your values and the things that are most important for your child, for you, for your family, the kind of person you want to be, the kind of parent you want to be. How do you stay on track with that when life is throwing all kinds of hard stuff at you? And also, you know, even when life is not necessarily throwing hard things at you directly, we all have minds, right? We all have self-critics. We tend to be really hard on ourselves as humans. I think particularly parents, when I work with parents, they have very overactive self-critics and really a lot of difficult emotions and difficult thoughts. show up in the process of doing things that matter to you, right? Because you wouldn't have hard feelings and thoughts if you didn't care, right? Because when you're indifferent, you don't, you're like, whatever. But so when you're parenting a kid on the spectrum, that is like the most important thing, right? Figuring out how to care for your kid, how to get the treatment you need, how to show up for your family, how to juggle a million different roles and a million different pressures, buffer yourself against all the messages that are getting thrown at you as to how to be a good parent, how to do the right thing, like all of that stuff. A lot of hard stuff shows up. So ACT is really about how do you stay connected? Again, I'm repeating myself, but how to stay connected to what matters and find a direction, like stay going your true north, even when you're being distracted or pulled in a million different ways, and really struggling through adversity, I think.
It makes so much sense. And I just, I mean, I was thinking about this morning and thinking about, even just last night, there were a bunch of different things that I needed to do. I just said, how do we set ourselves up for success? And I know that the best way to set myself up for success is to get a good night's sleep. But last night at 10:30, I had, the vet call and say that they had an opening at 10:30 at night at urgent care, that I could take the new puppy that we have inherited because my friend passed away. So, and I really, there's no appointments with vets. So at 10:30 last night, we were out taking the dog to the vet, and it's like this war sometimes that you have this value that, I really want to take care of myself, but I want to be a good dog owner. I want to be a good friend, and I want to be a good parent. And all of it seems too much. And that it's this toss up in the moment about like, what do you choose? How do you do? And that was like one night of my life. But I remember, and because you were around me then, that, especially when Jem was earlier and we were in the more intensive intervention and we didn't know what outcome we were going to have, that those kinds of decisions were so hard on a daily basis. And it ate at me. And I have come to realize that, and I was just saying this the other day, that you want your child to be independent, but you want your child to be safe. And those two things are almost always in direct opposition. And that alone, just those two things, for a parent with a kiddo on the autism spectrum, can be a daily struggle. So how is it that ACT helps us to sort that out?
So ACT essentially teaches you some strategies that can be kind of grouped into two realms. So we have acceptance and mindfulness-based strategies, and then we have commitment and behavior change strategies. And essentially the acceptance and mindfulness piece is, I would call it the and piece, right? So rather than saying to yourself, I want my kid to be independent, but I also want them to be safe. It's like, how do I move towards, I want them to be independent and I want them to be safe. Both of those things, can we make room for both of those things being present at the same time, and figure out how to choose in a direction that kind of moves us the way that we want. So acceptance isn't about things being fine. It's not about liking it. It's not about saying, okay, I want this struggle. It's about making room and space, giving yourself space, giving your self-compassion, I think, and being willing to make room for the hard stuff in the service of what you care about. And the mindfulness piece is about being present, right? Because when hard stuff shows up, like this decision about the dog or something that you're struggling with your kid, it's not just about this moment, right? It's never just about this moment. It's about every other moment that happened before that, every other piece of your history and everything you've gone through, everything shows up in that moment. And it can be really hard to know what you're responding to know what way to go, what am I being pulled by? And I think the mindfulness piece of ACT allows you to pause and breathe and get present in the current moment of what am I struggling with right now. I'm recognizing all of this other stuff is showing up. I'm recognizing that I'm having all these thoughts, I'm having a lot of feelings, I'm being pulled in different directions. How do I take a step back from that and pause, give myself the space to choose the direction I want to go in, the kind of parent I want to be in this moment, not in the future, not everything about the past, but what is the most important thing in this moment? And the next moment you get to choose too, right? So you can always, every moment is another choice of what direction you want to go in. You can always turn back in this direction, you can go that direction. So I think the acceptance and mindfulness pieces allow you to kind of pause and notice what's showing up. And then the behavior change pieces of ACT, the commitment values piece, allows you to choose. So it's kind of a process of pausing, noticing, choosing in the present moment, and then recognizing that that is an ongoing process, right? So every moment you can reorient and connect to what matters to you. And, you know, we have to do, the parents that I work with, they have to do so many hard things all the time. So how, and their BCBAs ask them to do really hard things all the time. Their treatment providers ask them to do really hard things all the time. And I think it's just so important when you know you have to do hard stuff, that you know what your why is, right? It's not just, we just have to do this hard stuff for the sake of it, but that you can really connect with why you're doing this hard stuff, the longer term, bigger picture, wading through this swamp in the service of what. And I think ACT, the commitment change piece, the values piece, helps you find your why when things are really, really hard. So I think those are the key pieces. I would sum it up in that kind of pausing, noticing, and choosing process. And bring in the heart. Like, I guess you asked me earlier, and I didn't speak to this, Shannon, but why I came to ACT, but really like finding the heart and the kindness and the compassion in this struggle, because parents know so much, right? Parents, I realized very quickly as a clinician, actually, Shannon, you mentioned, you know, you learned a lot from me, but it's a two-way process. Behavioral intervention is a relational thing, right? It's about relationships. It's about relationships with kids, relationships between parents and therapists and treatment providers. It's a reciprocal relationship. And you guide us, like you guide us as practitioners. We learn so much from you. You teach us how to help you, but not if we're not listening. So ACT is so important for me as a clinician, because it helps me pause and notice what I'm responding to. When a parent is struggling, can I show up? Because it's hard to watch people be distressed. It's hard for parents to watch their kids struggle. It's hard for us to watch you struggle. So it's a reciprocal intervention too. It helps me too. And I forgot where my train of thought's going there, but I feel like that's important to say, that this is a relational process, that I noticed that we have these great tools in ABA, we have these great behavioral, we have a whole literature on behavioral parent training and how awesome it is, but that's often not what parents need, right? Actually, parents are very capable. They actually do really know how to parent their kids. They know what to do. It just sometimes is really hard when the hard stuff shows up. So it's not a lack of like, I don't know how to parent. So me coming in with my toolbox and being like, you just need to do planned ignoring or whatever, is actually not helpful. When you can step back and give parents the space and the tools they need to show up for themselves, to know how to manage difficult thoughts and emotions, to know how to navigate that with their kid and manage, you know, be able to be present when their kid's struggling, they actually know what to do a lot of the time with our support. So for me, ACT was bringing the heart and the why, like, why should this parent do this hard thing? How do I understand what they really care about and what their kid cares about and what really matters to them as a family? And everything I do should be oriented towards that, right? How do I know that? I know that through ACT. I bring compassion and self-compassion, motivation, all of that stuff, because the rest of the stuff doesn't matter if that isn't present. I think the skills training doesn't matter if the heart isn't there, the motivation isn't there. And then for me, like I said, for me to nurture that relationship and be able to learn and be present and listen really well to what parents are telling me, what they're observing, and for me to show up as a clinician with my heart and be able to keep doing that even when things are hard. So I hope that kind of gets at the gist of it.
Very inspirational. I feel like I want to also say, though, that ACT wasn't specifically designed to be used with the autism community, and it isn't
True.
just with the autism community. And it's really in its really infancy that it in being used with the autism community. And there is a growing number of BCBAs and ABA professionals who are interested in this, I think, for the same reasons that you have said, that, you know, if you're a well-trained BCBA, you have that set of tools and you have science and you know what works behaviorally, but it isn't as easy as just, you know, programming a computer and going, okay, that's done. You have to deal with living, breathing people who are individual and have feelings about what you're asking them to do. And for every parent who has ever had a professional, whether it's a therapist or a BCBA, say to you, well, you just need to do this. And you're like, yeah, try that at 2 o'clock in the morning when I haven't had sleep. My other kid has diarrhea. Come on. You
because
know?
Because it's never about this moment, Shannon. So if you come in with that narrow view of like ABCs, right, it's just about the kid wants this. You said no, now he's having a tantrum. So you just need to not, you know, give him the thing. But that's ignoring the complexity and the depth of human experience, right? Because there is so much more history there. There is so much more going on, the richness of that. So I agree with you. I think yes, and yes, we have this toolbox and this science, and it works. It absolutely works. I'm a full preacher about that. And we also need to appreciate, in order for this to work, we have to appreciate the realities of the parent's experience and what everyone's going through. And ACT, I think, allows us to do that a little bit more and support parents to do really hard stuff with all of that that's going on.
So having said all of that, you know, people have all this love for you that they've been writing in and saying how lovely it is to see you back. But where, for the typical parent who's watching this, where would they find ACT in their community, where are the places that they should look to bring this more present into their lives?
Well, it depends kind of what you're looking for, but there is an organization called the Association for Contextual Behavioral Science. And
that's a mouthful. You're going to have to say that again for us.
So it's ACBS, Association for Contextual Behavioral Science. And they are an organization, a professional organization that supports the science and practice of ACT-based. It's ACT-based. It's not just ACT, actually. They support behavior analysis in general. There are other therapies that have grown out of this behavioral approach that they support, and they're both a scientific kind of organization and a practice organization. So if you want to get the kind of nitty-gritty of it, I would go there. They do have resources for the general public on there too. Clinical resources, book recommendations, courses, things like that, and providers. So you can also find providers who are interested in ACT in their directory. And I mean, also I would suggest there are, for parents anyway, there are plenty of providers doing some trainings for parents. There is a wonderful woman in England, Gemma Gilmore, who has a blog called Parenting with Science, and she's done some nice videos on social media, ACT oriented there. Lisa Coyne and I also did a free webinar for parents on burnout, actually parental burnout, not specific to parents of kids on the spectrum, but all parents basically who maybe have kids who are struggling. And that is available through YouTube, and I can send the link to you, Shannon, for that. There's some lovely books. There is a book by Russ Harris called The Reality Slap, which is about dealing with life when it slaps you in the face. It's not specific to parents of autism, but he actually does talk about his experience of using ACT to help him when his son was diagnosed on the spectrum and what that was like for him. And I like it because it's very brief. And who has time? Nobody has time to read anything. But if you do, that's a nice book that can introduce you to ACT in a layperson way. There are some lovely blogs by Lisa Coyne, for example, for parents on an ACT approach that are easier to read than a book.
And we should
So,
say that
yeah.
Lisa Coyne, her name is spelled a little bit differently than what they might
Yes,
think.
that's a good point. So it's Lisa and Coyne, Coyne.
Okay.
And she has actually a number of different blogs for parents out there. I would be happy to share some links with you, Shannon, as well.
Okay.
Autism Live is a good place because there's several episodes, I believe, in your archive where we talk about acceptance and commitment therapy.
There are.
Yeah. And
There
there
are.
are some apps now. There's some great phone apps that are based around acceptance and commitment therapy. That give you which are easier too than reading a book. They just are little, you can spend 1 minute learning a skill or practicing mindfulness or something.
Are there any apps in particular you would recommend?
Yes, there are. I'm just going to look at my phone. There was one that was released actually by the Veterans Association, I think, for COVID support. And I think it's called COVID Coach. And it is ACT based. Not specific for parenting, but it's a really nice, well-researched app. There is one called ACT Companion. I think that one costs money. The COVID Coach is free, I believe. ACT Companion is not free, but it was developed by Russ Harris and a few other people. It's great. It's really good.
Is there awesome autism specific stuff on that one, or just?
You know what? There isn't. So this is the piece that's missing, Shannon. So we should do something about that with all the time we have. But there is there's no specific books on for parents of kids on the spectrum. I really think we should do something about that sometime.
I'm in complete agreement.
Because the one thing I would say about ACT and why I particularly was drawn to it as well is because it's really helpful for situations that you cannot deal with via normal problem solving strategies, right? Like the chronic kind of challenges that you're being faced with when you have a kid on the spectrum. It's not, you can't problem solve everything in that situation, especially not in the short term. And ACT,
can we do an example so that people, yeah.
What do you mean an example?
So an example of a type of situation that is chronic that you can't solve through other means for a parent that's on the spectrum.
Well, I guess what I was actually thinking of was just that there's always another thing. Like it's that kind of situation, I think, that it's not like a quick fix here, right? Especially when your kid is diagnosed, so there are ongoing challenges, and every time you kind of get over one hurdle, there's like another hurdle, and there's another hurdle, and there's another hurdle. But some of the more chronic things that continue are like struggling with school issues, right? Yeah. That is just never ending usually. Finding a treatment provider that is good, provides good quality support and is right for your family, and how to fund that, and insurance and costs and financial worries, care for your kid, like that is typically an ongoing challenge.
And so doing other kinds of therapy, there's no magic wand that just fixes all of that. You got to keep walking through it.
And then for things like thoughts and feelings, Shannon, cannot be problem solved away. They come back. We can distract ourselves for a little while. Sometimes we can avoid, we can do all kinds of things to not face our feelings or to avoid thoughts, to try and think positively and all of that. They're very short-term fixes. And sometimes we run into more problems than more problems, because if our default is to avoid emotions and avoid thoughts and just try not to have them, they actually can come back worse. And the avoidance can lead to, it's fine to have one glass of wine at the end of the day. It's not great when you find yourself drinking bottles of wine every single day, all day. So I guess I'm also speaking to problems like, what do you do when you have difficult emotions and thoughts? Because that is something you can't just problem solve away and be like, I'm just going to not have them, right? That's
or the suck it up
a dead person's goal, right? To not have emotions is a dead person's goal, and the suck it up doesn't work either.
Often we're told to just suck it up. We got a child on the autism spectrum, just suck it up. I don't know how
helpful.
to I know how to eat it up, but I don't know how to suck it up.
Right. And not helpful. And all the things you probably often people do to try and suck it up actually create more problems.
Yep.
So
Oh, yeah.
I think ACT creates a space where, with the acceptance piece of like, this is happening, this is what is happening, this is how I feel, this is the thought that I'm having, and I can learn how to make space for that, to be kind to myself, to treat those thoughts and emotions with gentleness and kindness. And now I'm going to spend my energy figuring out how to move forward and do the things that matter to me, instead of wasting energy on struggling with trying to suck it up, because that is an energy suck that you don't have time for. It's not a good use of energy to be trying to struggle with your thoughts and emotions and make them go away and be fine. Yeah, so I don't know if, is that helpful at all?
It is very helpful. We're starting to run out of time here, and I don't want to forget to put some things in here. That there is evidence to show that not only does this help a parent, but that in turn, when the parent gets that help, that there is an effect upon the child. Talk a little bit about that. It makes great sense to me.
Yes. So, I mean, the first thought I had, well, yes, there is research to back this up, to show that when parents are supported in an ACT-based way, that they are able to parent in a more flexible, adaptive way for their kids. They model the skills themselves for their kids. You get so flexible parents, and parents are able to respond flexibly with respect to their emotions and thoughts instead of struggling against them. They actually parent more flexibly, and they're more sensitive to the needs of the kid in the moment. We see decreases in aggressive behaviors. We see decreases in anxious behaviors. There are a lot of really good outcomes for that. And also parents are better able to do things that matter to them in terms of self-care, for example. They're able to take action in a more productive way, in a way that supports their well-being and their family's well-being. And it is like an oxygen mask, Shannon. Like when you put your oxygen mask on first, you're way better equipped to help your child and help others in your family, for sure.
And you actually have a protocol that's how many weeks?
It's actually six to 8 weeks, depending on who's doing it and how you want to do it. But the one that I worked on with Lisa Coyne was actually 6 weeks.
Okay. And are you still doing the protocol, or is it just other people doing your protocol now?
I have been disseminating it to basically anyone who wants it. Actually, I've just been giving it away to many practitioners who are now using it and adapting it. I'm not doing it verbatim anymore. What I actually am doing now is running parent groups, which are actually 4 sessions. Because parents, it's hard to find the time to show up consistently to a group. And I also do ACT very much individually, but it's more individualized than the parent manual.
Yeah.
But many people are now using that protocol actually. And Lisa Coyne, it was adapted from one that Lisa Coyne and Phoebe Moore had created actually for parents of anxious children. And then I took it and adapted it specifically for parents who have kids with autism. So they are running that as well with anxious kids too.
So we have both providers and parents on, the different streaming services that we're on right now. If and people will watch this later on, if somebody is watching and they're a provider and they're like, I want the protocol, I would like to be doing this either with individuals or with a group. And if a parent is like, I would like to have, talk to my provider about reaching out to you to do this, how would they do that? How would they reach out? How would they get the protocol?
They are very welcome to email me directly, and I can share it with their provider. I can share it with you if you're a provider. I'm fine with sharing it with parents if they want to take it to their provider. That's fine. It is a provider manual. And I think if you go, it would be unusual, and maybe this is a good test actually of providers, but it would be very unusual if you go to your provider and you say, I heard about acceptance and commitment therapy, and I really want to understand how that might be useful to me, and I'd like to integrate that in is that something you can help with, or is that something you're willing to do? I think if they react with we don't do that, that's not appropriate or whatever, that's probably not a good sign.
Right.
They may say, we don't have training and we're not sure how to do that. And then that would be a time to say, well, I heard there's this manual that you could follow, because a part of the reason for me doing that manual, Shannon, was to provide a starting point for people who are learning, clinicians and practitioners who are really interested in ACT, who are learning how to do it and how to do that kind of work, so that anyone could use it. Like, it's written, the scripts are there, it's very step by step. It's designed for people who are new. I think obviously the more skilled you get at it, the more you can do with it. But it's specifically, there isn't an excuse really, I guess is what I'm saying.
There we go.
Yeah.
So where would they reach out to you at? What's your email?
You can reach out to me. I have so many emails. I'm like, which one is the best one? Probably they could reach out to my email at the eGould, the one you're using, the eGould@harvard.edu. No, eGould at, let me put it in the chat, Shannon, because I'm going to mess it up.
And then I'll read it because they're not able to see the chat.
Okay.
We don't broadcast the chat.
There you go.
So eGould at McLean, so MClean, CLEAN.harvard.edu.
Yeah.
So EGOULD at MCLEAN.harvard.edu. And I'm going to say it one more time with the alphabet the way they do. E as in egg, G as in gorilla, O as in Oscar, U as in umbrella, L as in lollipop, D as in dog, at M as in Mary, C as in, I don't know what C is, C as in cat, L as in lollipop, E as in elephant, A as in apple, N as in Nancy, .Harvard, HARVARD, I think everybody knows that, .edu. E as in elephant, D as in dog, U as in umbrella. And you can reach out to her there. And talk a little bit for just a minute here about what you have been doing at McLean, because anxiety is a big discussion among our parents, that we have a lot of parents and kids who experience anxiety. Can you talk for just a minute about what you do at McLean?
Sure. Well, I was working full-time at the Child and Adolescent OCD Institute as a clinician there. So that's a residential and partial hospitalization program for young people, children and adolescents who have severe treatment refractory OCD and plus, I'd say OCD plus. But they have a diagnosis of OCD in order to get into that program. However, about half the kids in that program are also on the spectrum, right? Because it complicates things. So a lot of the kids there have multiple things going on. And I'm now no longer working there full time as a clinician, but I am in a consultant teaching training role there now as an associate there. And I still work privately. I work with Lisa Coyne in a private practice, treating kids with OCD, but also spectrum, bunch of all kinds of mood disorders, all kinds of anxiety disorders, and all kinds of difficulties. And we take very much a family approach. I do a lot of parent work. Sometimes I work only with the parents because the children don't want to come, right? A lot of the time the kids are afraid, kids are very stuck. They don't want to come to treatment. So maybe I just work with the parents. Sometimes I work with the kids and the parents together. Sometimes I just work with the kids. But yes, I've sort of moved to more specializing in like kids who have high anxiety, who are also on the spectrum. But of course, I treat typically developing kids and young people. I work with young adults as well. So a really nice range and very interesting. I love it. I love working with parents. I love all of what I do. I still do a lot of training and consulting and things too, and it's really fun.
Well, you are a gift to this community, and you have been a gift to me in my life. I've mentioned this before, but I had the opportunity to go through at least a version of the protocol with Dr. Gould, and it was life-changing for me. I was at a critical moment in which my child was wanting more independence, and I was stuck. I was right there in that place of, I need for him to be safe. I don't and the world is not a safe place. And he, you know, even though he's doing so well, this was, you know, what, 7 years ago. And I needed to make the leash longer. And all I could see was that people were asking me to completely let go. And there was no way that I could do that. And what Evelyn did was she gave me the roadmap. She showed me what was important to me. She helped me to uncover that so that I had a reason why I was willing to work on it. And then she gave me small measured things that she led me to. She didn't say, oh, you must do this. She was like, what do you want to, now knowing this, what do you want to do, to the point where, you know, my son has a lot more freedom. I'm just going to tell you that in this, he's about to be a senior in high school now. And we're applying to colleges in the middle of a pandemic. Next year, when it's time for him to go to school, you're going to need to be on speed dial. Because I'm going to need, I've dreamt his entire life of him being able to wear the cap and gown and say, Mom, I'm off to change the world. That was my picture in my head for all of the ABA that we did. And now suddenly that we're just, you know, like 10 months away from that, I'm having trouble breathing, picturing him going off to college. So we're going to need a brush up. I'm just going to tell you. Because I go, I want that wholeheartedly, but it's scaring me beyond all possible belief.
Yeah, it's hard, Shannon, because I think, you know, something that Lisa talks a lot about too is the developmental process of parenting, right? We talk about developmental process of children and how they grow up, but we don't talk a lot about that, the developmental shifts that have to happen in parenting, and it's very hard.
Amen to that. I tell them on a daily basis, you know, I go, listen, I've never parented a 17-year-old before. Forgive me. This is my first go around. All right, we are totally out of time, and I know you've got another thing to go to, and so do I. We appreciate you so much for taking the time to be here with us, and we hope that people reach out to you to get the protocol. But thank you. Such a light in our community. We're deeply indebted to you. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for inviting me, Shannon. Bye.
Bye-bye. And I really have to bounce. I got to tell you guys that we are going to be playing an oldie but a goodie. Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. We're going to do that for the next couple of Fridays because I got to spend some time with this kid before he's a senior. We're live, you know, the rest of the days, but oldie but a goodie on tomorrow. And I don't even know which one. So, but we're back on Monday with Bonnie. I need a couple of more questions. I have a few that are just about your specific situation with school in the fall, with what you're getting, you know, what your issue is, what you said to school. Be very, very specific. Send it to me now if you want your question answered about distance learning or hybrid or whatever it is that you've got for the fall. Send those to me right now because I got to get those to Bonnie tomorrow. I love and adore you all. Thank you. I love some of the things in the chat and how appreciative you are of Autism Live. I will tell you, we wish there were more people watching too, but that really comes down to you. We don't have a marketing budget. Please share, please like, please follow us, subscribe, all the things, right? But if you love, and several of you wrote in and said that you love this show so much and don't know why there are not more people watching, please share it. Please share it. That's what we need more than anything else. Adore you. I will be back with you live on Monday. And don't forget, we show the marathon on Saturday mornings on Facebook. If you've missed anything this week, you can always catch it on Saturday morning on Facebook. All right. Love and adore you. Give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now.